get started. We have, do it.
Computer's like a bad child.
It is like a very bad child.
It doesn't get a gold star either.
It does not.
And one person didn't sign it yet, so now we'll sign
Hey,
it.
mine was.
Oh, well, that means I'm doing something wrong. Okay, it's working over here, not working over there. Okay, guys. Terry, tell them about yourself while I get the computer out.
So I've been a master naturalist since 2001. This chapter did not exist when I got certified. I started out in Gulf Coast chapter down in Harris County. And more and more of us in the chapter, as we were going through the classes and getting to know each other, realized, well, yeah, you live sort of near where I live. We finally made a count. I don't know, we'd all been in the chapter down there for a little over a year. We all got certified together. And one day we sat down and we counted up how many people either lived in Montgomery County or bumped up against the county line in spring, and there were 24 of us. And we decided to, raise our voices and say, it's time for a Montgomery County chapter. So I drew the short straw and went to the weekend-long orientation about how to start a chapter, learning all of the paperwork we had to do, all of the criteria we had to meet. So we built our steering committee up. It took us a little over 6 months of actual nuts and bolts to get all that paperwork done. And we decided that, you don't get officially chartered as a chapter until you've held your first training class. And we decided at that time that what we really love is to bring in folks who were still younger families, so that meant they would be working, or teachers. Because in the Gulf Coast chapter, I don't know how familiar any of you are with it, but they still hold their classes the way they did then. And that would be like Monday night for 14 weeks, or Tuesday morning for 14 weeks. It was very compressed. It was a weekday thing. And so those two groups that we hope to attract were really available to us. So teachers mainly said, if you want teachers to participate in this group, you've got to do Saturday classes. Well, who wants to commit 14 Saturdays in a row? So we decided that, okay, start scheduling, let's try 2 Saturdays a month. And that was a total break with the way every chapter in those days, we're talking so long ago that the program as an entity was only like 3 or 4 years old. That was a model that nobody else was doing, but I've seen more and more now start working on a little bit different way to construct how their classes are held, because in my opinion, what this does is it gives you a longer time frame to get to know one another, for the class and the group to have more bonds that you build, a longer time for you to find things to do that someone else in the group is also interested in, and those volunteering opportunities are so much more meaningful than they were. So 2005 was the first year Heartwood had a class. So this is 17 years in. So we're pushing 20 years out here in Montgomery County, and this is a terrific program. I hope you all appreciate. I hope you all appreciate just how much has gone before this class, and all of the people who have helped build this chapter and we have such a good reputation. I mean, Hartwood has such a good reputation because we don't just wait for things to happen. We're like culture that says, wait till it's dead, forget it, I'm gonna go out and kill something. Well, we go out and create and find things that we can do as a group. And so that's been another thing we've done since the start. So today I'm here as the water conservation specialist for the Woodlands Township Environmental Services Department. But I wore my Hartwood tag along with my work tag because, I represent for Master Naturalists in Hartwood. And our bond is so great between our department at work and Master Naturalists. You guys have put us in a position that all those terrific programs and projects that we want to do as environmental services happen because we have terrific volunteers. So going forward, when you're casting about saying, what kind of things can I do? Think of environmental services because I'm there. Other chapter members work in our building or in our department. And we want to maintain that bond with this chapter. We want to maintain that bond with Master Naturalists. We want to be able to put on the kinds of programs that make a difference in the community because we have really well-trained and really well-informed volunteers. And that's you guys. That's not what she asked me to talk to you about, but somehow that's where I went with this.
That's all the good stuff, Terry.
So thank you for letting me be here. It is truly a privilege to work with you, Master Naturalists, and I treasure that privilege every time I get a chance. So today is going to be a long day, and you're going to hear my voice more than you want as we go along. A few of you have heard my voice before and participated in other things that I've been doing related to water. And so, just nap. You could just nap while I'm throwing all that here, because you've probably heard some of it before. But it's my great privilege to be here, and I thank you so much. Are we ready?
I finally got it together.
Thank you. So the first thing I want to make sure you guys know is this. If you haven't heard, on Thursday, the International Union on Conserving Nature redlined monarch butterflies and listed them as endangered. National Wildlife Federation has not yet named them as endangered, but they're on a list for consideration. Who knows whether they will or won't, but it's interesting to me that I'll tell you this little short event that happened. I work with a lot of APES teachers, advanced placement environmental science. I work with a lot of APES teachers at local high schools with their environment teams or with their eco clubs or enviro clubs and water clubs at schools. And so some of the teachers I have really good relationships with. And on Thursday afternoon, I got an email from one of the APES teachers at Woodlands High School. And she's letting me know that I'm still working on my master's, Terry. Last year, she asked me to do a project with her students and her that she would include as part of her master's work. And so she said, I'm still working on my master's, Terry. And I think I'd like to add another element in. I was wondering if you could offer any idea about a way I can incorporate pollinators or maybe endangered species. And I replied and said, well, as of today, not just pollinators, but the monarch butterfly is now endangered. So we're probably going to have conversations and work on that. She's looking for something she could engage her students in, but just so you'll know, a couple of Master Naturalists worked with us on the invasives versus native trees part of her project last year. So if anything comes up, I'll let you know in that regard. But it kind of changes, not maybe everything, but it changes a lot. And in case you are not aware, maybe you don't live right in or near the Woodlands Township area per se, but this past year, the Woodlands Township, after spending 2 years meeting requirements, has been named by National Wildlife Federation as a monarch champion city. We're only the 10th municipality in the country to be named a monarch champion city. And part of it is thanks to the work that Hardwood volunteers did 2 years ago in growing milkweed in collaboration with our department and Nature's Way Resources to grow out milkweed that we gave away at our big annual event called Woodlands Landscaping Solutions. So this new assignment of monarchs being endangered now officially at the international level, I'd like for you guys to start thinking of ways that maybe the chapter could create a role for yourselves and participate with us. Maybe even involve some more entities like Nature's Way Resources or another one of the businesses that we collaborate with a lot that grow native plants is Allswell's Ace Hardware back in Sterling Ridge. You know, is there a way that we could all work together on another Let's Grow Milkweed project and try to help that? Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking, because I raise monarchs, I have nurseries and I try to grow milkweed. And so I'd be happy to even do something like help people with how to set up a nursery. It's easy. It's great, and it's great for kids and things like that. So I mean, that kind of thing too, I would love to be able to.
Are we still encouraging a class project every year?
We do not have a class project, we have the graduation presentation. But you know, from what, let's get together after and talk about a place at Woodlands Landscaping Solutions to actually teach what you're talking about.
Yeah. I find that like what happens is I run out of milkweed. I have it in my yard, and I run out and I'm going around the neighborhood. I drive everywhere to see if I could get milkweed from the neighborhood so I could feed my monarchs. It's crazy.
And this year was wild.
Yes.
And so why is the monarch on the endangered species list? Why is it? It's loss of habitat, which means no milkweed. It's also pretty much equally, if not more, use of pesticides, but you know, without the milkweed, the migration may begin, but there's no way for it to prevail. So talk about yourselves, you know, let's figure out something we can do.
Just a quick question. Which organization said listed monarch as an
It's the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, just Google IUCN. They listed it on Thursday.
You ready for me to just a little bit, Terry?
You what now?
You ready for me to run through these real quick?
Yes.
And then that's staff.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and use the microphone. This is, I got a little voice.
I think it's International Union for Conservation of Nature. I mean, or to conserve nature, but.
IUCN. Okay, so I wanted to ask if all of y'all have joined the TMN listserv.
What is that?
TMN is Texas Master Naturalist. The listserv is run by Texas A&M. There's a section where when you join the listserv, you will get things that have to do with the Master Naturalist program from the state level. They'll send you emails that have to do, and we just got one recently. I don't know if you saw it in the newsletter about the young man who's doing research on invasives. He's creating an AI program to show how the invasives will grow. If you take a picture of invasives in an environment, and he needs help. And so that's one of the things that I got off the listserv. So if you join the listserv, it'll have things like information about the annual meeting that's coming up in October. So if you'd like to be on that listserv, here's a
Reminders about TMN Tuesdays.
yes, you get all that stuff in the listserv.
And when unusual large volunteering opportunities come up, it may not be strictly local, but in our general region, you'll find them on that listserv.
The license plates, if you haven't gotten one yet, you can see a couple of them out in the parking lot. Very excited. Terry, how's your one? What did you say?
Mine says Myco, because I'm a mushroom freak.
Deep in the Heart, if you did not get a chance to see it at the theaters, it's streaming now. It's on Apple TV and Amazon.
My job is actually having it required to watch, so.
See that? It's required watching. Cannot mandate that. It's beautifully done. Ben Masters, who did this, also did Unbranded, where he went down to Mexico, I think, and got horses that were going to be slaughtered and rode them all the way up to Canada. It's beautifully done. And he's done some on the bighorn sheep. He's done a bunch of beautiful, his eye is just amazing. And he's actually spoken at one of our annual meetings.
Where is that streaming?
Apple TV, Google Play,
Amazon.
Amazon Prime, and Voodoo. You're welcome.
And sometime this fall,
But
our department through the Texas Recreation and Parks Society TRAPS is working on, they have, the larger organization has some licensing agreement that we can tap into since we're Parks and Rec. And so watch for an announcement that Environmental Services may be showing this fall.
I wonder if we can get it mainstream. I'm gonna have to check and see with our mainstream.
Are we gonna have the level 2? Is it just a level 1?
It's just level 1 until all of the trainers take level 2. We can't present level 2. So that's why we're doing level 1. There's a project that we're doing as a chapter that we considered way back a couple of years ago. And we've been working slowly, inching our way slowly toward it, where we do landscape advising. We'll go into someone's yard, a couple of us, tell them what's invasive, tell them where natives would do a better job, talk about water conservation. It's more than education. We don't design gardens, we just kind of promote natives. And taking this class is the beginning of that journey. So if that would be something that would be of interest to you, please do join us. I don't think the registration link is out yet, but I wanted you to put this on your calendars. And if you haven't yet, the Native Plant Society is a great organization to join. Our local chapter is called Pines and Prairies, and the president is one of our members. So I think it's like $25 a year. 35. So don't tell Bobby who does it. Look at that smile. She told me. I told him it was 25. So it works. Okay.
And incidentally, the name Pines and Prairies was one of the names we considered for this chapter.
And that's why I suggested it to you. Yes. That's how she got it to us. She was like, what are we going to call it? And I said, well, no, Pines and Prairies is really good. I was reading some of the old historical documents. So yes, we have historical documents, almost 20 years old. So how's your graduation presentation coming along? Are you thinking about what you're going to talk about? You can do it as a group. If more than one of you likes a subject and you're like, oh, they don't know. And it can be anything from 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. Doesn't matter, okay?
Each of us we have to get up and do it.
You do not have to do it, but it is really nice if you take a deep dive into something that really interests you. What you might want to do is think about it this way. Find something that really appeals to you, do your deep dive, and then decide if that's something you think you want to teach other people, or is it just good for you, okay? What amazed me, I had never heard of Microwaval Fungi when I went through the program. And we had a couple get up and do a presentation on Microwaval Fungi, which blew me away. And I was so amazed that this fungus does so much for plants and for the ecosystem. And I'm like, I've never heard of this before. And they just did their deep dive.
Is that the fungi that grows on the root system of plants?
That's the one. That's the one that the mother tree uses to communicate with all the baby trees. So yes, it was amazing
It's all
to
the
me.
shrooms, man.
It's all from the shrooms. Just ask Terry, my Michael friend. Okay, are you in the directory?
How do we do that?
I said, how do you do, what you do is you send a little picture of you to heartwoodweb@gmail.com. I did cover that up. Bobby, how do you access the directory? If you go under current members, there's a little tab when you drop down that menu that says current members. There's a little tab that says members only or something like that, and it's password protected. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now, because I'm recording this and it's going to go on YouTube and allow the whole world in there, right? Because then they get email addresses and stuff. So when you do send me your picture, include, if you like, how you'd like to be contacted if a fellow member wants to contact you, whether it's an email, a phone number. What I usually do is put a picture. And as you can see, I have a couple of places where there are phone numbers, a couple of places where there are emails, and then I include what year you came through the program. Okay. Do you need help recording your hours? How's everyone doing on their hours? All of you should have your intern hours going in very easily. Easy to do. I see a little snicker back there. So if you have any trouble putting your hours in, just get with me or Bobby or, well, and Melissa, who's the director of membership. And we'll help you put in your hours. We'll walk you through it, okay? I have my computer here, we can walk you through it. And this is the last slide. We had one of our members pass away suddenly. She was in this class. Now, I don't know if you remember her, because we haven't gotten together that often, right? Her name is Barbara Malone. And so what I'd like all of you to do is to get up, and I want you to introduce yourself to one person you haven't met yet. Come
So I was excited about class today. I really wish you would have us last night. You stayed up to the mission. I know, I told you that I got to get the words and everything was coming out. Okay, let's get started. So.
That's great.
Okay.
Just lost control. Yeah, go Okay, for those of you who chose to sit in the back, can you hear me well enough without it, Mike? Then would you turn this off so I don't have to hold it, please? Thank you.
I'll raise my hand if I can.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Those of you in the front, I'm sorry, I'm Jack. So let's talk about water today. I mean, we've got the whole morning to talk about water. And I know you've already had one class on water. So let's start off with you telling me what you learned in that class. What did you learn about water?
Aquifers, don't suck them dry.
Okay.
So there are a bunch of agencies that control it right now.
Wait a minute. Wait.
I learned two things. I did not realize there was different levels of aquifers under, and I also learned that the flood control district and the water conservation district don't agree on how to control the flood waters.
What else did you learn about water?
Riparian areas?
Yeah. It's not just a big word, it's a big problem. Yeah.
I didn't realize it was.
Yeah. Riparian areas, you talked about riparian areas. Tell me something about riparian areas. They are amazing.
They're vital. We have to have.
We have to have them. What else do we have to have? Wetlands. What else do we have to have? Well, yeah, we do have to have trees, and they play a big role in water. How about estuaries? Did you talk about estuaries? Yes,
Nurseries.
absolutely. So, does water really matter that much? Yeah, it does. You know, learning about water is not just about what it does all day. I mean, so what you're telling me is you learned a lot about what water does all day. But you guys are learning to be master naturalists. And what that means is you're training to be volunteers. That's the purpose of the organization. You're training to be volunteers. So what role can you play as a volunteer that's helpful to water? To keep that water clean and available and avoid things like subsidence. What can you do as a volunteer? Tell me something you've thought about or done.
Teach.
Okay. And do you feel as though you know enough about water that you could say, go to a group of fifth graders and teach them about water?
Not until this class is over today.
Good answer. Let me see if I got it. I saw one head nod here. So would you like to be able to do that? Would you like to be able to go see those fifth graders and talk to them about water and help them learn something about not just what it does all day, but some fun stuff that they could get involved in that would help them value water better? Yeah. What else could you do to volunteer? Lisa.
Dog parks do outreach to talk to people about people waste and the contamination of our local waterways.
She's so nice. I say dog poop. I even brought my dog poop with me this morning. There it is. Come touch it if you want. Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Help the Friends of Lake Livingston plant water willows to help with water purity and pollution.
So is that the only place you could go and do a project to help with a water restoration thing? No, but it's a terrific program. And I don't know, have you already talked about the background of it? Has Scott shared about all the background behind water willow project with.
I thought we did.
Inmates in Alice.
You did.
I mean, it's an incredible program. And this chapter is a sponsoring chapter, and it's through this chapter that those inmates who are helping with this actually get their associate membership. They can't really volunteer like we can, so they can't really get certified as master naturalist, but they're master naturalist associate. So that's true. What else could you do?
Volunteer with a conservation group that's land trust, for example, working to preserve wetlands and riparian areas.
In what way? What work could you do there?
In particular, you could conduct annual surveys on the conservation easements to make sure there are no violations and everything is still within.
Have you talked about conservation easements yet in classes? Does everyone know how a conservation easement works?
Not really.
So I own this 300 acres. And I'm really not gonna ranch on it. It's just because, you know, I like saying I own these 300 acres and I'm probably gonna cut out a, I don't know, 5-acre area and build me a house and some big shed out there. I own 300 acres. But you know what? Over there on the side of this 300 acres is this terrific area. It has not just native vegetation in it, but it has some native trees and plants that are kind of unique to the part of the state where my 300 acres is. I wonder if there's a way I could make sure that when I'm gone, whoever ends up with this property doesn't destroy that really terrific natural area that's on my property. So I could reach out to a land trust, and there are many that operate in the state, some local, some regional, some statewide land trusts. And you can put your property, a section of your property, a part of your property, you know, they're very negotiable, what you want to preserve, into a conservation easement. That means that the conservation easements, almost without exception, are in perpetuity. That means no matter who owns this property, that section that's in the easement is preserved. A lot of folks who own big property put sections of it into conservation easements for the tax break. Let's face it, on land, the real value of the land is in its potential for development. I mean, if you own thousands of acres that you've been farming and farming is going down the tubes and you think I've been doing this long enough, I'm ready to retire, and you sell your big farm, is somebody gonna buy it and continue to farm it? Not in this day and age. There are some developers gonna buy it and build 225 new houses on it. So if there's some area that's really worth preserving and you put it in a conservation easement by terms of that contract, you give up the rights to develop in perpetuity. That part of the land can never be developed. Well, when you give up that part of your ownership, then the value of the property immediately plummets. So however much is in a conservation easement, when it comes time for the county to do an assessment, to send you your tax bill that year, that much of it gets taxed at a much lower level. So it depends on what your real desire is. I mean, what are you trying to accomplish with a conservation easement? But it's a great tool if you have property that has features on it that, if not unique, or at least valuable enough in the natural world to preserve.
The riparian areas.
The riparian areas are great, yes.
So who determines whether there's a part of that that can be preserved or qualifies for that conservation.
Well, as Diana mentioned, you know, so the first thing has to happen is a baseline survey, and it's been my privilege to participate in many, many baseline surveys on properties in the past. I mean, it's kind of an all tax listing. See what's growing there, see what's living there, assess the potential for problems that are encroaching. I mean, you know, what if it's got a great area of native plants and trees, but there's also a lot of invasive species encroaching. So first you have to figure out what's there that's worth preserving, what the owner is willing to do. You know, I'm not gonna lie to you, there is a fee to put property in a conservation easement. So how much is he willing to invest in preserving that property? So it is a process of assessment to determine the value of it. You probably are familiar with the fact that a lot of the area, Spring Creek, both sides of the creek, on the Emory County side and the Harris County side, from where Highway 59, where Spring Creek crosses Highway 59 to where it crosses Highway 45, and then a little bit past Highway 45 from there. There's, I forget, like 13,000 acres of that riparian area on both sides of the creek that are in a variety of conservation easements. Not all of them are held by the same entity, but a significant portion of them are either held by Montgomery County or Harris County.
Does that restrict what can be done for
Yes.
water flood protection? So like going in here will be like concreting on some of these sites.
So the short answer is no. The nature of riparian areas. Well, I want to go back to this. So, as you learned in your earlier water class, the state of Texas owns the water. And there are other agencies that have a variety of controls. So, it depends which agency controls the water, not the property alongside. And the nature of conservation easements along riparian areas is that the reason whoever owned it, whether it's a county entity or a private person, the flood zone properties are not really eligible for development anyway, so they're not giving up a big potential for a payoff down the road by selling it to a developer, because that would not be a good place to develop. So giving that right up in a conservation easement is not that big a loss for potential, and it looks really good when you put this property in a conservation easement. So why not take the tax break and be a good guy? You answered it. Thank you. Oh.
So, you know, they have like eminent domain where they can take things to better the city. Can they do that with the conservation easement? Can they just take it?
They can take the property, but the conservation easement per se is supposed to stay in effect. Now, there have been not many, but a few court cases where in most cases, it wasn't the original one, where through the legal system,
Flood control district is doing that right now for Cypress Creek Reserve.
so they can through legal channels to try to negate the easement or part of it.
Why not force a conservation easement? Like take a property, be like, nope, can't develop on this. It's gotta be preserved.
I'm sorry, Ann. We live in Texas.
So what happens if you own this property and you go through this process and then, you pass on or whatever, and whoever gets your property or your grandkids decide they're gonna sell it?
You can sell it. You can sell it. You can run a business on it. There are all kinds of things that can happen with the property, but the easement can never be developed unless you go through some legal battle to negate it. Somebody had their hand up.
Who enforces this?
It is a contract. It is a legal and binding contract filed with the county where it is. And typically, that's one of the functions of the land trust, is to act to preserve the integrity of the easement. So whoever wrote the easement for you would be who would help you battle for it. Somebody have their hand up? So we're sort of still talking about water, but we've got a little bit of feel, but you see where this living in Texas with all these different controlling parts of it are, it's complex. But back to ways to help keep water clean and working well. So you probably know if you live in Montgomery County, and I know not all of you do, but you probably know if you live in Montgomery County that historically, every single drop of water that came out of the faucet when you turned it on was well water. Those aquifers. We pumped all of our drinking water from aquifers. But we were growing. I mean, the county was growing. The couple of large cities, urban areas were growing. So the pressure became greater and greater on the aquifers. I mean, think about it. I have a glass, and Justin has a pitcher, and I put a straw in my glass, and I start drinking the water, and Justin has the pitcher, and he starts pouring it into the glass as I drink it out. If he's got a big enough pitcher and I have a small enough straw, he can stay ahead of me keeping my glass full of water. But now everybody in the room, bring your straw, and we all come up here and we all put our straw in this glass at the same time, and we're all drinking the water at the same time. Is he going to be able to keep up with keeping our glass full? Probably not. Let's not go there. You want to? I'm not even going to repeat what he said. So that's where we were. We were beginning to use our straws as a group to the point where the aquifers weren't able to keep up. And we knew that because guess what? One day somebody noticed the ground was sinking. Oops, there's a big crack across the roadway that they keep having to repair. The neighbor down the street has this giant crack running down his driveway and into the roadway. The ground was sinking. So through a series of collaborations among some of those agencies, the wise thing seemed to be, let's not continue to only use groundwater as our drinking water source. Let's mix in some surface water. What is surface water? Did you talk about that? What is surface water? From a reservoir. What is surface water in general?
Rainwater.
Surface water.
Yes.
So it's water you can see in a waterway or a water body. That's surface water. It's really quite that simple. And guess what? Way back there in the 70s, 80s, I don't remember when, City of Houston realized they were growing and they were going to need another source for water in the future. So they built Lake Conroe. And they owned Lake Conroe and the water in it as a hedge against the future need for drinking water. So here in Montgomery County, agencies got together, collaborations were done, and the San Jacinto River Authority entered a contract to lease a portion, about a third of the water in Lake Conroe as an alternative drinking water source. And in the year 2015, we began using surface water as 30% of what came out of our faucet. And you learned about surface waters, you learned about aquifers, so you know that the waters aren't the same. The surface water is going to be a lot what we call softer water than that harder water that comes from underground, has more salts and minerals in it. So they built this infrastructure. I mean, it was a huge undertaking, it was years in the making, so that we could pump, treat, and pipe surface water to facilities where the surface water is actually hardened, the salt levels come up, so it matches what's being pumped out of the aquifers. Then the two are blended, and the percentage can change, but the initial percentage was about 30% surface water to 70% of the aquifer water. And then it's softened back down together once it's blended, and that's what comes out of the pipe when you turn on the faucet at your home.
So is that in the Woodlands 30% or in Houston? What are?
No,
Montgomery
this is
County?
Montgomery County.
Okay.
Why on earth would they harden the water? Just turn
You
around and-
can't blend them otherwise.
Oh.
You can't mix them together otherwise. 'Cause
What
once-
happens?
Well, they just don't mix. So you might turn on the faucet one day and it's harder, and you might turn it on the next morning and it's softer. They have to make them equal to blend them, and then it comes out of your faucet slightly softened back in, after it goes through another treatment plant.
So better living through chemistry.
I'm not sure it's better living, but it's living through chemistry, yeah. So here we are, and it's actually over the years since 2015, our level has raised. There are times we've used nearly 60% out of Lake Conroe versus 30, and I think right now we're averaging about 35% out of Lake Conroe. So tell me something you know about Lake Conroe. Yeah.
What determines that percentage that is being used for surface water?
You know, all those agencies that collaborate, they figure it out. They dig it out and decide what's going on. I don't want to get into those politics.
Okay, but it doesn't have anything to do with like drought or if there's flood, like, it just has to do with whatever they decide.
And they make determinations. We assume they make determinations based on things like that, but, you know, you and I don't get to participate in that.
We don't see behind the curtain.
No,
We just drink the
we
water.
didn't really want to. Tell me about Lake Conroe. What do you know about Lake Conroe, Steve?
Can you send a river dammed up?
Yeah,
It decreases during drought. It's not invasive species.
all right. How big is it? How many acres does Lake Conroe cover? 20,000. Who could tell me what an acre foot of water is?
It's a volume that is an acre in area and a foot in depth.
Okay, so how many gallons would that be?
No idea.
A lot. A lot. Anybody know that number? So it's like 365,000 gallons of change. So how many acre feet of water are in Lake Conroe? It's like 20 BC, but that's not necessarily the most important number to consider.
20,000 acres.
It's 20,000 acres.
How many gallons is it?
So let's not do the math.
I thought that's what you were asking for, sorry.
It's like 412,000 acre feet and change. So 412,000 times 365,000, it's trillions of gallons of water. Right now, today, in this heat we're having, and with drought so that there's not a lot being added, how many gallons a day are evaporating into the atmosphere? Out of Lake Conroe? A lot. 80 million gallons a day. On a hot day like this, the level of the water drops a 1/4 inch. That's easy math. That means every 4 days, the lake goes down an inch. Well, in a normal year, there's gonna be rain and runoff will keep it topped off. I don't know, do you drive in the Woodlands at all? Have you driven down Research Forest and looked left or right to see Bear Branch where you cross it there? There's no water in Bear Branch right now. And the same will be happening with Lake Conroe if we don't get rain in a reasonable amount of time, because we're not refilling it.
Is it as low as it was in 2011?
I don't think it's that low yet. I didn't look for, I didn't have a chance yesterday to look and see what the current level is, but we're not there yet. Believe it or not, we had enough rain earlier in the year, right before we hit this bad drought. And just so you'll know, Montgomery County is in moderate drought right now. About 79% of the state is in severe or extreme drought. You're in moderate drought. So would this be a really good time to do some water conservation? When would have been a good time to start conserving water? Yeah. From the minute we used water would have been a good time to start doing some water conservation, but the next best time to start conserving water is today. So what could I do? Tell me something I could do to conserve water.
Rainwater catch system.
A rainwater catch system, okay. How does that help me save water?
You can use your storing it up.
Well, you can't use it, well, you could use it instead of tap water for the lawn. You don't drink the rainwater. Yeah.
We have a problem with our air conditioning malfunctioning, so we are bailing water out. And we get like 5 gallons a day. If every business called the water from their air conditioning systems, it would be amazing.
There's been legislation put forth, and in a few, shall I use the term, more progressive states, there are even some laws on the books about capturing condensate from those systems, especially those larger systems for buildings, to use condensate as either irrigation or diverted into the building so it can be used to flush toilets. There's legislation that more progressive states have adopted that allow for the effluent from wastewater treatment plants to go through a second or even a third treatment and be piped to be used as irrigation, or even to then go to a water treatment plant that sends it to your home for drinking water. And if you live here in Montgomery County, you may be familiar with that little neighborhood on the east side of 45 called Oak Ridge North. 3 years ago now, they installed a whole purple pipe system, and they pump the wastewater treatment plant's effluent through that purple pipe system. And in irrigation speak, purple pipe means it's reused water. Instead of dumping the effluent into the creek, they pump it through that purple pipe system, and residents can buy into using that for their sprinkler systems. So they draw that water to reuse rather than putting it back into the creek.
Sorry, this is kind of off tangent, but you said they could process it 2 or 3 more times so that people can water their yards with it?
No, so you can
Drink it, okay. I thought you said like the effluent could be processed more for, because I was gonna ask you, why are we processing it more to water our yards,
No.
but not processing it more to dump it straight into the creek?
No.
Okay,
So it can be drunk.
okay.
You remember the last time we had this huge drought back in 11, 12, something like that. City of, was it Wichita Falls? They literally ran out of water. they ran out of water. And so they kind of had no choice but to, instead of dumping effluent into a waterway, to run it through another couple of treating turns and pump it out to the community as drinking water. And they still do that because it's not a problem. I mean, think about it. Think about it. What goes out of our homes, whether from the sink or from the toilet, goes to the treatment plant treats it, they release it into the waterway runs into the lake, we draw water from the lake, we treat it, and we drink it. So why not shortcut that? Because here's the problem. We get water to drink from Lake Conroe. It goes through all this process, all these pipes, comes out our faucet. When I'm talking to fifth graders about ways to conserve water, and I ask fifth graders, tell me something I can do, the very first thing, and 6 of them say it at once, is turn off the faucet while you brush your teeth. I mean, that's such a, we've heard that for so many years, it's a cliche now. But it's a valid way to save water because on average, turning off your faucet while you brush your teeth saves about 4 gallons of water. But if you leave the water running and it goes down the drain and it goes to the treatment plant and it goes to the waterway, is that going to end up in Lake Conroe? No. So that water now is headed downstream, and those 4 gallons are in somebody else's waterway that's getting treated for them to use for drinking water. And we got to go all the way back to Lake Conroe and get 4 more gallons and bring it through the process. And we turn on the faucet to brush our teeth and we let the water run, and those 4 gallons go somewhere else again. So it may sound trite, but you know, how many people are in your household and how many times a day do you brush your teeth and how many times 4 gallons are you going to save in a year from ending up somewhere else? Just turn off the faucet while you brush your teeth. I don't know about you, but in point of fact, I never turn my faucet on. I have enough moisture in my mouth that I put toothpaste on my toothbrush and I brush my teeth. I never turn the water on until I'm ready to rinse my mouth with my toothbrush. But it's a valid way to save money. What if I turn the light off? How much water can I save if I turn the light off?
Quite a bit.
Why do you say that?
Because everything goes back to water balances and interconnected. You're using energy to treat water, and you're using water to make electricity through steam, turbines, and all that. So it's all connected.
We study it as the water energy nexus. So when I turn off the light, I'm saving electricity, which means that I'm saving water. And when I turn off the water, that's 4 gallons of water that hasn't had to have electricity to capture it, treat it, and deliver it. So I'm saving electricity at the same time. That's why today, one of the things I brought you are some very cool LED night lights. When I give them out to people, I say, I brought you a night light that saves water. And the reaction is always the same. It's like, oh, what? So think about it. If you unplug stuff that you're not using, that's a drain on electricity, you save water. And if you think before you let the water run, you're saving electricity, which saves water, which saves electricity, which saves water. And who are we in this room? Who are we? That's right. You know, wouldn't it be nice if we thought of ourselves as conservationists? Wouldn't it be nice if that was a goal of being a master naturalist? was to be a person who thinks about the environment and does our personal part to help take care of it. And it's small stuff. I mean, it's not, you don't have to do everything every day. That's not reasonable to expect. It's not even reasonable to aspire to. But everything we do that helps, helps. So I'm here to say to you, there are ways you can learn about water that you can then turn around and teach others, talk to others about, help others appreciate. And isn't that really the whole mission of being here in this room and being a master naturalist? Isn't that who we are and what we do? Is make sure as many people as we touch, everybody in our circle of influence, everybody that we have the opportunity to volunteer with, every organization that invites us to participate. We don't care what their motives are. Honestly, I don't care what an organization's motive is in inviting master naturalists to come volunteer with. I don't care. It's the conversations that result that matter. It's who we get to talk to, who we get to meet, what we get to say about ways to be better stewards of this earth we live on. And water is such a huge part of it. Well, you know, no, we can't do without oxygen, but we can't do without water either. And if we're out of water, you know, we're done. So
How about stop using single-use plastic to save water?
and you know, even if we don't stop how much plastic we're using, even if we don't stop it, could we do a better job of how we dispose of it? That bottle of water you have in front of you, the bottle took 1.85 gallons of water to make. And in America, we throw away 30 million of those a day. Not recycle. We recycle some. But in America, we throw away 30 million of those bottles a day. So what happens to plastic when it breaks down? Okay, so microplastics is a buzzword right now. Everybody's talking about microplastics. Turns out every one of us in the room has microplastics in our bloodstream. But what else is happening? So it's, as it begins to heat, plastics, as they begin to heat, left out there in the environment or sent to the landfill, they start off gassing. Stuff that, it's not good stuff, dioxins. As plastics break down, they release other things like cadmium that's used in the manufacture of plastics. It's a binder in making plastics, but as the plastics break down, that can end up on the land where the plastics are. Somebody threw their bag out the window as they drove down the road. And what happens the next time it rains? So it either leaches into the soil or it runs off into a storm drain. And where do storm drains empty out? The nearest waterway, whatever that nearest waterway is. Every single storm drain empties into a waterway. It could be a drainage channel, it could be a stream, a creek, a river, a lake. And that water's not filtered, and that water's not treated. When it goes into a storm drain, it goes straight to the waterway, as is, carrying everything off the land that the rain washed into the storm drain. So, you know, it's another thing I love to talk to the fifth graders about is how watersheds work. You guys talked about watersheds. So tell me, what is a watershed?
Just an area that captures the water so that it goes to the aquifer and then into the body of that's gonna go to a lake, river, whatever it is.
So, yeah, it is essentially just a geographically defined, topographically defined area where, as the rain hits, we live in Texas, it looks like it's flat, it's not. So we have all kinds of hills and valleys, higher and lower ground. So when the rain falls, it's not gonna stay up on the top of whatever the rise is, it's gonna go to the lowest point, right? So it's gonna go one way or another. And in this geographic area, everything that hits and falls in the same direction to one ultimate source, that defines the watershed. So I thought this morning we might start off with a fun way to teach younger kids about how watersheds work. So why don't we take 10 minutes, you can refill your coffee, make a pit stop, take 10 minutes. For this, I'm warning you in advance, we'll do something here in the room for a few minutes and then we're gonna step outside. So just be prepared to go outside, but take 10 minutes and I need 3 volunteers to help me set up stuff. No, we're gonna test videos, so right now we're going. So, I'm going to go make sure that every place where somebody has had it. And the rest of you, that's, markers, let's put at least, say 3, 4 colors. I don't care what the colors are at every state. Generally, we're not putting it back in. But make sure that everybody has at least 3 or 4 colors at every state. Everywhere you see somebody sitting.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Carolyn, right here, Carolyn, do we recycle in this joint? Why?
No, I haven't seen any recycling.
Where's your bag?
Terry, do you need more?
I need for every place there, some of the cities have 3 or 4, different markers, colors of markers. Start with the boxes and mark these out. Three different colors in every space where there's a person. I don't care what the color is. Sure.
Yeah, there is.
I'm gonna recycle them. I'm not gonna.
What's up, boss?
Yeah.
Great job.
It's a sign. And then by the way, guys, who's over here on the table I brought for not the sign, not the big sign.
Very excited. Rayola Black Market.
Actually, I don't know, the bacteria, just cracks me up. And why? So I live right next to Shenandoah Park, where they have their dogs. They live right next to my sidewalk. From people who had, wasn't in the bag, and the bag was treated. I was literally going into, yes. I had somebody in my trash bag, what they said, my mom is, yeah, white box and dark, that's pretty much all it, that's longer, you know. So they make.
Okay, I'm seeing it here, this one, that's the Harvard train, that's got the owl on the level. This is the owl, and she'll hear me talk, and if I come over here and talk, hello, owl. She moves it. She has a owl. Hey, owl. Yep, I'm over here. Keep coming. You got it. There we go. So she will keep her eye on the other speaking, and then the top shows the room. But then I'm taking it here because I posted to YouTube when we're done. I posted classes for people who weren't able to. We have one of our people, I don't see her on there right now. I think she's in Germany. And no, there she is. There's Jordan.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm, yeah. So
How much are these?
I think they're on. So we borrowed that from the Central Meadows. They purchased it for their and because they have like, they have 10 of them, they
We were searching for that. We didn't know what we needed. We know it's just a camera. Like a daily experience. Always prompted it. So, yeah. It's night and day from what we had to I would have to go back and watch the first I can talk
traffic all day long, I don't people over here.
And I have. Yeah, well, it's hard But we threw out.
But I still want to continue, I'll still know if it's. The box.
And that is and then instead of listing it as oh, yeah. And do you know, it's so, I have it on one iOS once, and so it's not because I knew, but I didn't see. Yeah, so it's just, I think and I think it goes through and okay, guys. Started.
I said there's stuff on the table I brought for you to take, and someone asked me about the faucet aerators. Let me tell you really quickly about the faucet. So in homes built since, say, the mid-90s, the standard for faucet aerators has become that they allow 2.5 gallons to 3 gallons of water per minute when the faucet is on. That the little gizmo inside here actually prevents more water than that from flowing. You know, back in the day, when we first began to do things like low flow meant low. Turn on your water, and you know the water came out in such a small amount that you had to let it run so long you sort of totally naked and washing your hair, the shower. Oh my God, you had to be in there all day. Technology improves everything up to a point. Technology has put us in a position where we now have high pressure, low flow aerators. And so this one I brought you is cool. You know, I don't have my glasses on. I'm not going to put them on to look, but I think this is a 1.5 gallon per minute aerator. So think about that. This is high pressure. I promise you, you put this on your kitchen faucet, you will not tell any difference from whatever you have on there now. But you'll only be able to run 1.5 gallons of water per minute from the faucet. This is a cool guy because it not only swivels, but when you pull down on this silver sleeve, it goes from stream to spray. And someone asked me, this is for my kitchen or my bathroom. My answer?
Yes.
I took 3 of them home and put one in each of my bathrooms as well, because, you know, the thing of it is in the bathroom, they always put those little short faucets. So you're trying to wash your hands, you're bumping against the back of the sink while you wash your hands. This thing, I swivel it out. It's so much nicer to use. And I can pull it, make it a spray if I want. So I didn't honestly count how many I just threw some in a bag. If you've taken one, and please do, and if everyone that wants one has taken one, when we go to the next break, you can keep it out if you want to say, okay? So, let's talk about teaching kids how a watershed works. So, when I work with 5th graders, I say, this is my watershed. And I make sure that I tell them that just because my paper that I'm using as an illustrator square doesn't mean a watershed square. Watershed can be any shape. And I ask them if they have a watershed in their yard, and most of them haven't a clue what that would mean. So I tell them, okay, you know, in your backyard, it's usually back there in the corner where the fence kind of comes together, and every time it rains, Mom says, stay away from there because you're going to get mud on your shoes, because that's where the water tends to pile up. And yeah, if you go out there, you get mud on your shoes, and then Mom's upset. That part, that makes your yard a watershed, because all the rain that falls into it ends up in that corner. But what if, when it's raining, water is running under your fence from the neighbor's yard and ends up in your low spot in your yard? That means your neighbor's yard is part of your watershed. And what if on your street, all those neighbors' yards are running water and they all end up in one spot, and then it's usually in front of the storm drain, it's clogged up with leaves. That's a watershed. So watershed can be as small or as large as you want to define it, or where water ends up in an area. But we're going to learn a little bit about a little bit larger watersheds, and this is my watershed. So how am I going to see how it works? So you can wait for me to show you this, and then we'll all do it together. So the first thing I got to do is create some highs and lows. which is how it is. Even in Texas, where it seems flat, we have highs and lows. So I've crumpled my paper. I'm not flattening it, I'm just opening it. And now I have hills and valleys. Where's the water gonna go? The valleys. So I don't care what color you use when I ask you to do this. The color doesn't matter, but there happens to be a blue in here, so I'm gonna use blue. And I'm gonna connect all these valleys together because in a watershed, that's why it's a watershed. Because all the water connects to flow to one point. So I'm doing this quickly just as an illustration. There's my waterways in my watershed. Now in my watershed, well, there's this neighborhood. They love to have their grass green. They compete for green grass. So in that neighborhood, they use a lot of fertilizer. So there's quite a bit of fertilizer on the ground. And I'm illustrating that with a color that says that's where the fertilizer's on the ground. Over here on this side, I don't know what they're building, but they came in and clear cut and there's bulldozers running. So there's a ton of loose, bare soil over here. So here's where whatever that new development is, with all that loose soil. On the other side is a farm. The guy has lots of cows, and the cows are pooping on the ground all day. So here's the part of the landscape that has cow poop on it. And then it rains. So what we're going to do is create a watershed, each of you. You make it whatever you want it to be. You designate whatever you want your land areas to be. Use as many colors. If you use up all your colors and want more, turn to your neighbor and swap out some colors. Make a watershed, and then we're all going to go outside. We're going to make it rain. Create a pond and then you start adding stuff.
I do this with my.
Yeah.
Yes, right there in that packet. See that right there? All connected together. All the water has to touch each other. Because in a watershed, all the water runs together to end up in one place. There's no separate water area. Okay, that's fine. It may have all ended up in a lake. Okay. You could flatten your paper a hair more and add more tributaries to your lake. What if you have a then you've got to run the water somehow. You can make that just slightly.
Hey, Terry,
Yeah.
they want to see it at home.
So there is, where am I? There is my watershed. With all the water touching. I don't know how to make this work for you. All the water's touching and I have all these different land use areas. Key to doing this with kids, just make sure you buy a washable mug. Just saying.
Did you get that the same one?
No, thank goodness.
I don't get it enough, we just don't wash it.
Yeah, it says here. So use the side of your marker and make those broad strokes so you cover the surface area of the land pretty well. And don't forget, the land has to run right up to the water because that's what land does. Okay, give you 5 more minutes to make your watershed. Broad strokes, folks, broad strokes. really big reading yards, they have to pay someone to take care of, which is that. My husband was a kayaker, he was a volunteer kayaker for, I got out and walked around one day and I was like, somebody.
And when I was working as a landscaper, I do have
He was like,
here. It doesn't help anything. It'll help for like 5 months and then everything will start going down. It'll burn out. if you watch it.
Brain. My brain went. So like, how I can make all my water bottles. And then that's what I thought. So like, how am I gonna get all this water to mix? And burn it?
Yeah.
Things being like this, like,
Okay, we're narrowing down, we've got it, we got land uses going on, we got water. They all fit together, yeah. So I don't have enough spray bottles for everybody to have one, so come and grab spray bottles till they're gone and let's all go outside, we're gonna make a mess. Leave your crap on the table. Your markers.
Sure.
I got my books.
so I had a dream that I came in. And it was Hindu. You ever thought of doing something like that? It's a very dark, take on candy.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, fantastic.
You would have had to go. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, guys, I'm trying to figure out how to do it. So you just- It's the hour. Oh, it's not.
I don't have mine on. She might have
Oh, but
hers
I
on.
can turn the owl instead of doing the owl.
Yeah, no, they just tell it that it's your
Because
phone.
the Zoom,
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I mean, if you
Okay.
turn on the camera of the phone, then you can do this to use what phone?
use, it's,
This one?
no, it's this one.
This is a phone, right?
That's the phone, yeah.
So we do this. What back for everyone? Yeah, and now this
Bobby,
is the one that's.
Bobby,
There you go.
That's it.
That's.
You want to
that's
take it
this?
outside? Yes, that's
Oh,
this
yeah,
one.
that's the phone. So, yep, that will.
Oh, you are, it's called Spotlight for Everyone. Good, good. Oh, God, this is so awesome. Oh, this is great. Justin, are you not finished?
No.
Yes. I could probably teach.
So you're right. That's what you do.
And they were. I had this conversation. So the next thing is chasing the waters on the fall. And so that.
No, put it in the trash.
I know, you can see I'm so excited for the Easements.
That's what I did, guys.
That's right, that's right. Modern arts, I love it.
We always.
Yes, absolutely.
I just finished.
You're having too much fun.
You can sit down.
You gotta mute it.
Yeah, I said it. Wait a minute.
It's right there. So if you wanted to borrow the Enviroscape, like there's little houses, there's a little boat that goes in the little lake, there's a little tractor for the farm.
Does it represent any particular place or?
No, there's little trees, no, it's very generic.
Okay.
It's
So-
very generic.
Terry, one of our people at home apparently we were muted outside. Could you kind of recap quickly what you talked about outside with the?
Certainly, certainly. So it would be good for us all to think about what we learned out there. In our watersheds that we cause rain to fall on, we noticed that as the rain fell, that what was happening on all of our land use areas affected the water because the fertilizer was running off into the waterway, the bare ground, the loose soil was running off into the waterway, the cow poop was running off into the waterway. So our water, depending on what color you use for your water, in my case it was blue, my blue water now suddenly was this black, gray, ugly, purpley stuff. Because so many things had washed into that waterway. And so it's a great way to help kids understand that what we do on land, everything we do on land can affect the health of our ecosystem in a general way, but water specifically. Because when it rains, things wash off the land, go down the storm drain, and end up in the nearest waterway. And for those who are online and didn't hear me then mention that I have a large molded plastic Enviroscape. It's available for loan if you want to do something with a group. And on the Enviroscape are little baby cars to go in the road and little houses to go and a little factory, tractors and pigs and cows, So, and some trees. So it's, if you want it a little less messy, as I said to you outside, I use Kool-Aid. I use different colors of Kool-Aid for each of the land uses. We still make it rain, we still go outside, we still make it rain. But as all of those different colors of Kool-Aid mix in the designated waterways on the enviroscape, you see that nasty gray, black, brown, purple water build up. So it's a very powerful tool for not only understanding how the watershed works, but our human impact on waterways. And gives us clues to ways to improve. So when I do this, either way, with the Enviroscape or with the crumpled paper, when I do this with kids, the next conversation is, now, what could I do to help keep this water in my watershed healthy? So I'll ask you, based on what we just learned, what could I do?
Pick up the dog poop,
If I could pick up my dog's poop and do what with it?
put it in a bag and put it in the garbage.
So let me tell you a short story.
Okay.
The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, one of those many state organizations and agencies, is the state organization tasked with monitoring and reporting on the quality of all 191,000 miles of waterways in Texas. They tell us that Spring Creek is listed as impaired, which is a legal designation. It's impaired for contact recreation. That means, according to TCEQ, you should not touch that water. It is a health hazard. And the impairment, don't.
No meat.
It's high bacterial levels, and when they test it, the most recent assessment is that about 76% of the bacteria in Spring Creek comes directly from dog waste. Our department, Environmental Services, is one of our divisions, is a mosquito abatement group. So what we do is trap and test mosquitoes throughout the township to watch out for advance warning about insect vector disease such as West Nile virus. And we report to the communities when positive testing mosquitoes are found. And you might remember a couple of years ago, if you lived right in the area of Williams Township, a couple of summers ago, the numbers of positive testing mosquitoes was just going through the roof. You know, every week we were finding another dozen or however many positive mosquitoes for West Nile virus. So the guy said, you know, let's see if we can figure out what's going on, because we were in somewhat of a drought. We were having less than normal rain. So it wasn't just that there was a lot of standing water. There had to be something else going on. So they went out and started popping the manholes, those big metal covers that are on the top of the storm drain inlets. They started taking those covers off to see, is there something going on in the storm drains? Well, oh my gosh, were there mosquitoes in there? And the reason was
Yard waste.
So tell me I'm wrong that you see in your neighborhood some guy down the street who hires a landscape company that, you know, we call them, they say they mow and blow for a reason. They come, they're there 15 minutes, they've mowed the yard, they get the blowers out, they blow all the leaves and all the grass clippings into the street, and then they blow those down the gutter and right into the storm drain. All that yard waste was holding just enough water. It only takes an inch. It only takes like a tablespoon of water for mosquitoes to breathe. All that leaf litter, grass clippings was holding just enough water for mosquitoes to just proliferate at an alarming rate. But guess what else they found? Bag after bag after bag of dog food. The owners would walk their dogs, take the time and trouble to stop and pick up the dog's poop and tie it up in a bag. And then rather than taking it to the nearest trash can or taking it home to throw it away, they toss it in the storm drain. Okay, in what world is that okay? But I mean, they kept sending me all these photos. Every day they were sending me more photos of all these bags of dog poop in the storm drains.
When we did the woodlands cleanup, I did Brogan'sville, and most of the trash that I picked up was dog waste bags thrown into the trees.
What?
So yeah, there are people who walk the pathways, pick up their dog's poop, put it in a bag and hang it on a tree limb or just toss it into the tree, hang it on a fence. They are absolutely certain in their belief that the dog poop fairy will come along and pick those bags up, and you know what? She doesn't. So the next time it rains, now, in addition to what they've already thrown into the storm drain inlet, the rain washes the rest of the bags off the land, and now they're in the storm drain, and it all goes to the nearest waterway. So our impairment in Spring Creek from bacteria is mostly dog food, which means, honestly and truly, it is a 100% solvable problem. Pick it up and throw it in the trash. 2 steps, 1 solution, pick it up, throw it in the trash, and when we all do that, bacteria level goes down, right? So, yard waste, those guys who are blowing those leaves in there, they're breaking laws. It is illegal to put anything into a storm drain, anything into a storm drain inlet. Storm drain inlets are there for stormwater runoff to be carried to a waterway so they don't build up and flood your street. That's why they're there. When you put anything into a storm drain, you're breaking both state and federal laws. If you're the house that mowing below landscaper is working at, and you let him blow those leaves into the storm drain, you may have some liability too. The state fine is up to $25,000. The federal fine is up to $25,000, and there's a potential for jail time.
Yes, I say just blow it into the street. Is that illegal?
Yes, because it still goes into the drain. So here's the thing. Why in the world would you want to get rid of those leaves? Every single nutrient that tree that dropped those leaves needs is bound up in those leaves. Break them up around the tree, not up against the trunk, but around the tree, near the drip line is best. Mow over them with the mower to chop them up so they decompose more quickly. And as they decompose, they put every one of those nutrients that the tree just lost in their leaves back into the soil right where the tree needs it. Rake up the leaves if you have to and go use them as mulch in your flower beds. It's full of nutrients. Chop them up if you will. If you don't want to, just rake them up and use them. If you put, say, a 3-inch layer of dead leaves in your flower bed, you probably won't have to weed anymore, number 1. And number 2, you certainly won't have to add a lot of fertilizer because everything all that vegetation in your yard needs is in those leaves. So use them. Make them into your own compost right in place in a garden area or on the grass. And when you mow your grass, leave the grass clippings. It has the nutrients the grass needs. I promise you, by the second morning, you won't even be able to find the grass clippings on the grass because they will have already started breaking down. Insects will have come and chew them to pieces. They'll be turning into the nutrients your grass needs.
And I have a simple question. So the first question is Is there any outreach that's being done to those lawn-proof companies that are registered where they're notified about the fact that this is a law and they're breaking it? And then the second question is, if you see somebody, especially if it's a repeat offender, who do you contact?
So
Kind of,
depends where you get your water. The second part is it depends where you get your water. So if you live within the Woodlands Township and you get your water bill from Woodlands Water Agency, and you see this guy and he's blowing the leaves down the street and into the storm drain, take a picture of him, take a picture of what he's doing, take a picture of his license plate on his truck. If there's a name on the truck, take a picture of that, and you send those pictures to Woodlands Water Agency. With a time, if you make sure there's a time and date stamp, but send them and say what the address is. If you can figure out which yard he's working at, send the address where that person is working. The nature of this kind of law is it can only be regulated if it can be proved. I mean, the fact that leaves are in there doesn't mean we can prove who cut it. But take pictures, send them to your, whoever you pay your water bill to, your mud, your utility, whoever, and ask them to please reach out to this place. Now, here in the Woodlands Township through Woodlands Water, if you are not watering according to the schedule that we have that allows watering, if you are using water outside the constraints during a drought that have been announced that are in place, things like this. The first thing that happens is you get a fairly friendly letter saying, maybe you didn't know, but please stop. The second time you do it, you get $50 added to your water bill. The third time you do it, you get $100 added to your water bill. And from then on, every time you do it, you get $200 added onto your water bill. What, like right now, is we start to begin to look at whether there are any constraints we're going to see from the water companies that are drought related. We should happen to go to a stage 3 drought. And it has restrictions on when and how much you can use water outdoors, especially. And you get to that 3rd violation level, they just turn your water off. Legally, you can disconnect you from it. So, you know, they're not playing. The reason we have rules and regulations is, well, do we all always do the right thing just because it's the right thing? No. Sometimes we need a little help, you know, what the right thing is, and sometimes we need a little more help incentivizing our compliance. But especially as we go into drought, be mindful of what you're doing. But if you see someone whose sprinklers are running, their automated system, their automated sprinkler system, you see it running during the day, that's outside any definition of the defined irrigation schedule in the Woodlands. So if you see sprinklers on, take a picture of the sprinklers, take a picture of the house for the address, note the date and time, send an email to Woodlands Water, and they will send them that fairly friendly person.
Terry, I had a question about dog food. I'm making compost at my house, and I'm wondering, is dog food good or bad?
Don't put dog food in there. The reason it's a problem in the water, the reason it's not good in the environment,
Bad bacteria?
it's the bacteria, but I mean, they have so many other things. So people say, well, the deer go poop in the woods. Okay, the deer is eating what's in that ecosystem environment and pooping it back out. Those things that are there are staying there. We don't let our dogs out loose to go and figure out what they can catch and eat.
Yeah.
We feed them high nutrient food. So number one, the bacteria is full of nutrients that are causing other problems that we can talk about in a minute. But number two, you know, even well cared for dogs have bad guys in their guts that are really, really bad when they get into the waterway. Not even ultimately that they're bad for us if they're not treated for when we drink it, but I mean, what about the fish and other organisms, especially things that live on the bottom in the sediment where that stuff tends to accumulate. So it's an unhealthy waterway. So don't use dog food.
What about alcohol cats?
Same thing is true. The exact same thing is true. Thankfully, most people keep their cats indoors.
It's not in our neighborhood.
So not only is their poop a problem, because you may perceive that they're burying it, but they're not burying it deep enough. Unless they're digging a hole that's 6-8 inches deep, which they're not. It still washes into the waterway, and they're out there killing birds all day. So that's a problem too.
In terms of going into compost though, it's in the same vein as if you were to put like bacon or beef, you can't do that. And those animals are omnivores, so they eat meat. So you wouldn't put meat in your compost. You don't want to put meat, fecal matter into your compost, right?
Well,
I know this is a different class, but.
yeah, so sort of yes, although at places like Nature's Way Resources, that is a commercial composter, they can take more of those meat related materials in, because the nature of those big piles they have, the heat buildup is high enough to kill a lot of bacteria, but even they certainly do not want dog waste in there. And just in case you didn't know, if you have horses, although the Nature's Way charges businesses that collect out different kinds of waste and bring them there to be composted. If you have horse manure, they'll take that all day and there's no fees to take it there. So it's up to you to shovel it. You know, you go in and you say, hey, I have horse manure. They'll say, go down to that pile over there and you've got to shovel it yourself. But there is no fee even for commercial entities if you're bringing horse manure to Nature's Way Resources. So.
But can't you just use that manure as your compost, your fertilizer, as is?
So it's a little hot. It's a little hot itself. Man, you can probably add a very small amount at a time, but if you actually have a horse that you're picking up after, it's too much to put in the compost.
You need to compost.
Yeah, it's too much to put into your compost bin. Yeah. So.
Yeah, okay, so it's my stupid question. What is for the water, like the regulations, is there a way I can like quickly access that, or if I have friends that are doing this kind of thing, like where can I find to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I mean, I don't want to.
Where are the rules?
Okay,
Where are they? Yeah,
so I'm not gonna get this right off the top of my head, because I always have to look at it, but if you live in an area that you pay your water bill to the Woodlands Water Agency, the last number of your house number, whether it's even or odd, is what determines when you can use your automated system. And so this is not it, because I would always have to look. For example, if you have an even number house, maybe it's Tuesday night and Friday night are the nights you can water. And if you have an even number house, it's Wednesday and Saturday. It's something like that. So it's 2 nights a week, and it's after 8 p.m. and before 6 a.m. the next morning is your window to water on your designated days.
Or you look, like you look somewhere, so like someone.
I keep a thing on my desk that reminds me. But you can go to woodlandswater.org. If you live in the township, go to woodlandswater.org, and in the search thing, put defined irrigation schedule, and it'll tell you what your dates are.
It's on my water bill right now.
It probably is on your water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tuesdays or odd numbers are Tuesdays and Fridays.
Okay.
Even numbers are Wednesdays and Saturdays.
So that means Tuesday night, beginning at 8 p.m. until Wednesday morning, no later than 6 a.m. Now, I keep reminding you that this is automated sprinkler systems. If you have a hose and you put a sprinkler on the end of the hose and it's attached to your hose bib, you can water whenever you want. But the question is, do you really need to? Carolyn?
I have a question in the chat. Let's say you gather all of the big bags and they all end up in the landfill. What about the water around the landfill?
So, that used to be a problem. I mean, landfills used to be problematic in many ways, but it's been, 2 or 3 decades now that landfills, once again, by law, have to armor against leakages. They have to manage for that. They have to control that. They have to cover soil areas. I mean, they have so many regulations you wouldn't believe to control stopping leaching of all kinds of stuff into the environment, including into the soil so that it might end up in aquifers. Do they all comply and do the right thing? Well, probably not. But by and large, landfills is where we want that stuff because they manage for it.
How do they differentiate with the hose attached to what do they think?
Well, they believe in you, that you are not going to put a hose on the hose bib and put a sprinkler on the end and turn it on and go in the house to get a cold drink and decide you're gonna make a sandwich and 4 hours later, it's like, I left the sprinkler on. They believe you're better than that. So they think that what can flow out your hose is, a smaller amount of water and you're spot watering. So if you've ever, I forgot I left the sprinkler on. If you live near the Woodlands and want to come by my office, I will give you a hose timer that you put between the faucet of the hose and the hose itself. And you can set it so that even if you remember, because you're that good, it's back. And you set it to sprinkle out there for, say, 10, 15 minutes in that little garden area where your best plants are. If you do get distracted, it turns the water on. Yes.
I have a website to share with everyone. I shared it in the chat. It's mywaterway.epa.gov. You type in your address and then you can do the waterways and how you remember not to get into there.
Very cool.
Mywaterway.epa.gov.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are.
So I put a soaker hose out around one of our trees, starting to drop all kinds of leaves. And I had it running for quite a few hours. But I got an email from Ford saying, hey, do you have a leak? Because they've got this automated system, and I guess it's monitoring on a daily basis what you do.
Not just daily, it's monitors in real time, minute by minute. And so you haven't been doing that before.
But we did it because they sent us a letter
Right,
saying.
right. But the reason that you got it is because it's in case you do have a leak. What if you do have an automated system and you turned it on and in the heat, the piping has deteriorated and now all of a sudden the water use starts going up at an unusual time and in an unusual amount? Wouldn't you rather they send you an email and say, hey, did you develop a leak somewhere? They're not gonna ding you for this. They're not asking you to stop doing this. They just wanna make you aware that your water usage jumped up and in case you didn't have your soaker hose going, oh man, I didn't know water was running, maybe I should check for it.
Well, we were a little intimidated.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I mean, you want those kind of alerts. You want that kind of messaging because you could have a leak somewhere.
I will say we had that problem, and I wish we had had a system that would have let us know. Because our water bill just kept going up and up and up, and we're like, what is going on? And it turns out we had.
Yeah.
I think the smart meters that they've installed now in Woodlands is what they're monitoring your usage. And so if they see an anomaly, they're just to notify you that either you have a leak or something, or maybe you're not watering correctly or whatever. So
Now, let me say this, let me back up. Because you have a smart meter, doesn't mean they're gonna say, hey, if there was water use going on, that probably means you were watering outside the defined irrigation schedule and send you that sort of friendly letter. They're not, because that's not what it's for. But they will send you an alert. If you sign up for it, you have to sign up for it. But if you did, then they will send you an alert that says it's an unusual time that you don't usually have water running. And so you might want to be aware when you have a alert. It's intended to help. It's not to intimidate. Yes.
I know needs vary from plant to plant, but would you say conservation wise, is it more smart? Is it smarter to use a soaker hose as opposed to traditional sprinklers? Or?
Okay, well, the short answer is it depends.
Okay.
So, assuming we're smart enough, that when we're planting plants, especially if we're adding new plants, that we're grouping plants that need more water together versus another part of our yard where we're grouping plants that need less water. And, common sense would dictate that we would read that label or research that plant, those kinds of things. So, yes, we want to, number one, know how much water the plant needs. Hopefully we have them all grouped together. And depending on the plant, most of our native plants would really rather have the water on their roots than on their leaves.
Yeah.
So when you have a traditional automated sprinkler system, it's putting the water up here, which may not be really where the plant wants it because there's so many things that can block how much water actually hits the ground in the area where the roots are growing of the plants, that it could end up somewhere else. And you might have to run the sprinkler longer than needed to put water in the ground there. So drip irrigation or soaker hose is usually a great way, especially if you have the lengths of flower beds. Run that soaker hose in there or that drip line.
I think another consideration is when you spray, an enormous amount of water evaporates and blows away.
Yeah.
Typically half.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There was a number I read in one of the classes that whenever you use the sprinkler, a certain percentage of that water evaporates before it ever
So
even
strictly-
does anything for the
Strictly
plant
in
or
terms
grass.
of conservation, then a soaker hose would be like the equivalent of this to a
Yes.
traditional sprinkler.
Yes, you're putting the water where it needs to be and in a way that you're not losing any more than reasonable amount unless you forget to turn the faucet. But, so, and what happens is you drive down the street and you see people, even if they're watering at the right time and their automated system is on, and they've got their spray heads set so that the water looks fine, rather than big drops that fall to the ground. And it's that the finer the spray, the more evaporates, and it's easily half of that water is going to evaporate. You see that the sprinkler heads are not tuned up so that they're putting the water on the ground. It's only going that far over onto the driveway. It's only that far, but how much of the water running down the gutter is from that far on the driveway,
Winds we've had.
Winds we have don't help either. So it comes back to this. If you live within the Woodlands Township doesn't require you to have any turf grass in the yard. A lot of people don't know that. If you live in the township, you do not have to have turf grass in the yard. And if you do have turf grass in your front yard, the maximum area of your yard that can be covered by turf grass is 60%. So looking into the future with high temperatures, changes in precipitation rates, more people using water, maybe this isn't a bad time to think about chewing away a little bit of that turf grass and replacing it with more native plants, keeping in mind that we want to put plants that use water alike together and plants that use less water alike together. Would that be a great way to conserve water? And then maybe if we have an automated sprinkler system, convert a spray head or two in that zone to drip and cap off the rest of the sprinkler heads in that zone so that we're watering those areas on the ground, putting the water at the roots so it can soak in rather than evaporating out. Would that be a good thing to do? I was in conversation with my boss during the break. This is my boss. So after the day, before he leaves, you can tell him how great we thought this was. In the 2022 state water plan, which was just approved a couple of months ago, if you Google 2022 Texas water plan, you'll find that document that the Texas Water Development Board puts out every 5 years. It is a compilation of water data, information, and projections from every water region in the state. We happen to be here in Region H, which is pretty much aligned with that 13 county region around Houston that is under the auspices of Houston Galveston Area Council. They are our local NGO that is the partner for the EPA's Clean Rivers program. And so they do a lot of the professional monitoring out of that organization. There's many other benefits to Houston Galveston Area Council. But we're in Region H, so all of those water agencies and entities in each region all get together and talk about what they projected 5 years ago, what those results are looking like, what the projections for growth are, what the projections for water availability are, what they would like to see happen with water for the future. And even though this report comes out every 5 years, the projections are for the next 50 years. We're projecting 50 years out. How much water are we going to have, and how much water are we going to need? In the 2022 state water plan, 27% of the water we're going to need is going to have to come from conservation. So when is the best time to conserve water? Well, 50 years ago would have been a good time. The second best time is now. So if we're going to be those people, who truly call ourselves conservationists. I mean, what is water conservation about? Is it just about turning off your faucet while you brush your teeth? Is that the only thing it's about? No. It's about preserving the ecosystems, the environments that keep waterways healthy. It's about benefiting from those services and goods that those ecosystems provide. It's about doing our part to take care of what we do on our own landscapes, in our own areas of control. It's about so much more than turning off the faucet while you brush your teeth. And, you know, this is the group who can do this. This is the group who can learn this and talk about this. This is the group who can get kids on board now so that they have a chance to make better decisions, I'm sorry to say, than we made when I was younger. I won't say myself. But the you in this room still have a lot of decision making to do. But we haven't always made the best ones as a society. We're beginning to see the fruits of those ill labors in the world in ways that are undeniable. So wouldn't it be good if we learn this and we teach this, not just to our peers, but to as many kids as we can get to listen. And to do that, we have to find ways that they'll be engaged in that learning. They'll be able easily to understand our messaging, and they can take it to heart. And we can help them make better decisions by adopting better behavior habits. You know, I'm so darn old that, I mean, in my day, if you wanted to dispose of something odd that was hard to figure out how to dispose of, the thinking was you could dump it in the water, because water is that universal solvent. Anything you put in water eventually is going to be destroyed, decomposed, taken out of the system. Okay, well, we've since learned that during that whole process of getting rid of it, because water is dissolving it, we're doing a bunch of bad stuff. So I mentioned earlier that Spring Creek is listed as in here. Spring Creek is also, according to TCEQ, of concern as fish habitat because of persistent low levels of dissolved oxygen. Okay, what does that mean?
Don't eat the fish that you catch out there.
I think it means fish won't live.
So those leaves I talked about getting blown into the storm, right? When the rain comes and they are washed into the nearest waterway, what happens to them? What happens to those leaves? They decompose. What are those three main decomposers? Bacteria.
I'm out of ideas.
So here's an easy way to remember the three main decomposers. Remember, when something dies, the FBI is on the scene. Fungi, bacteria, invertebrates. FBI, fungi, bacteria, invertebrates. They're the same three primary decomposers in terrestrial ecosystems as they are in aquatic ecosystems. Are all three of those organisms oxygen users? Oh, yeah, they are. So all those leaves go into the water. All those decomposers get busy. They start proliferating to break down all that stuff. Well, you know, during the day, if there's some vegetation, some algae, some vegetation in that waterway that's photosynthesizing and putting its excess oxygen into the water, okay, we're good. We're all right. But at night, all those decomposing organisms are still using oxygen, and all of the vegetation now, the reason that trees and plants put their excess oxygen out there during the day is so at night they can use it. So at night comes, they can't photosynthesize anymore, they start pulling in that oxygen for their own use. Fish aren't that smart, really. They're busy during the day. Hey, look at all this vegetation. I'm going to nibble, nibble, nibble. The nutrients from those plants, from that decomposition, the nutrients that result in the water are helping more vegetation grow. He's out there, fish is out there nibbling away. And if he's, you know, if he's in an ecosystem where there's a lot of other things to eat, those nutrients are feeding other things to eat. There's more dragonfly larvae for the other fish to eat. There's more small fish for the big fish to eat, you know. Sun starts going down, vegetation stops photosynthesizing, starts using up the oxygen. Fish is swimming around. He's just a few more bites, just a few more mouthfuls of something I'm going to eat. And as the sun sets, you know, he's having a little trouble breathing, but he's, you know, he's going to persist here. If you could be there when the sun comes up, all those decomposers and all that vegetation has used up the oxygen. I've seen it personally many, many times, especially in smaller water bodies. As the sun comes up, there's fish up at the surface with their mouths out of the water. trying to figure out a way to get oxygen out of the atmosphere. That's not what they're made to do. It doesn't work for them. They are trying to breathe in oxygen from the atmosphere. It doesn't work. And if you look around, you see all their friends belly up dead. Because there wasn't enough oxygen. So this is another reason to keep the yard waste out of the storm drains. Keep the yard waste in a place where it's useful and helpful. And when it decomposes, the nutrients are where they need to be. Don't let it go down the storm drain. That's why I said, don't blow it into the street, because then when it rains, it goes down the storm drain, ends up in the waterway. It's a problem. And what about those houses that we talked about where we made our watershed, where they like to use a lot of fertilizer? Saturday morning, early morning, Dad gets up and says, hey, rain and forecast today. I'm gonna run out and mow the yard and put down fertilizer so it gets washed in when it rains.
Washed out.
Is that where the fertilizer goes? Fertilizer goes down the driveway, down the street, into the storm drain, into the nearest waterway. More vegetation. Okay, helps grow vegetation on land. It's gonna help grow vegetation in the waterway. A lot of vegetation in there. During the day, oh my gosh, the amount of oxygen is sky high. Good thing, right? Can't photosynthesize at night, using up all that oxygen it put out there during the day. In the morning, belly up fish. So from our watersheds that we made, what can I do? What can I do? Could I use less fertilizer? Could I at least follow the directions? I mean, we are in Texas. If the label says 1 tablespoon per gallon, let's just dump some in because more is better. So could I either eliminate or greatly reduce the fertilizer? Could I find out, for goodness sake, if my grass even needs the darn stuff? Could I get a soil test done? Could I only put fertilizer down at the right time of year?
I don't know if this is your favorite, but are there some turf grasses that are more eco-friendly than others? Is St. Augustine like maybe not the best? Maybe this may be out of your.
So St. Augustine is a warm season grass. Never, ever, ever, ever fertilizer water St. Augustine in the spring until you've had to mow the lawn at least twice to show that it's actively growing.
Okay.
You start putting fertilizer down, especially stuff like nitrogen. You start putting fertilizer down the minute we get past what we consider going to be the last crop. Hey, it's early March. Let's go start fertilizing the grass. Can't take it up. It's still coming out of dormancy from the winter. It can't even use that. Wait till you've had to mow the grass at least twice so you know it's actively growing before you put down any fertilizer. But have a soil test done. Find out if you even need fertilizer. The more fertilizer, the more water you put on the grass, the lazier you make it. If I don't have to grow my roots deep to find water and find nutrients, why would I? Let's spend all my energy making green blades so that you can mow them for me. I mean, talk about vicious cycles. So turf grass is not our best choice. It's not native to here. That's why we have to baby it so much to get it to grow. We tend to overwater it, so it's not growing its roots. Shallow root grass, it's not as healthy as it should be. So that means every insect that walks across it is going to cause it a problem. Every fungus that comes along is going to cause it a problem. You spend all your time at the big box store buying some chemical one after another. And just as with the fertilizer, where do those chemicals end up? So, and never mind if they don't get washed off, even if they stay in place. What was the first thing I told you today? The more chemicals we put down, the more degraded the environment is for things we need. Whether it's pollinators or birds or mammals, I mean, they call it a food web for a reason. It's the same on land as it is in water. It's a whole web. Who grows, who eats that, who eats that, who eats that? And we keep making these breaks in the web. I mean, it's like taking a stick and knocking out holes in a spider's web. You know, it's not as efficient, it's not as effective. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. The more gaps we create in how the food flows through the web. So, you know, if I was gonna ask you one thing, it's please stop using chemicals in your landscape. Yeah.
I'll just share with you, if you're gonna get support, because you're saying use less fertilizer. I would tell you right now, your yard doesn't need any.
So the minute the temperatures consistently are at 90 degrees or more, it's a warm season grass. But what that means is it's smart about heat. The minute the temperatures stay at 90 degrees or more for just several days, the grass starts shutting down and going dormant. It's not actively growing right now. So you put on water, you put on fertilizer. Hey, it's starting to look a little brown. I better put some fertilizer on. Okay, you can force it to green up. Trust me, the minute we get back to rainfall, all that wet soil that has dried out now is going to start building up some fungal growth, and your grass is going to say, yikes. Your grass is dormant right now. Don't water it, don't fertilize. Well, water it lightly if you must, but only enough to keep the soil moist. Don't pour water on it. San Augustine grass, no matter what time of year, can't use more than about an inch of water a week. If you're using an automated system, do you know how much your sprinkler has put out during any given period of time? Or do you just set your controller to run for 30 minutes and hope it's enough or not too much? Because if you put too much on there, why would I grow my roots and get myself healthier? I can just sit here and bask in this fertilizer overwatering situation, and next disease and next insect comes along, I'm dead, you know. But you'll put something else on me to bring me back to life. So, San Augustine. People I trust say you absolutely have to have a turf grass that's not a native grass. Zoysia is pretty good. I hear that. There probably are one or two others out there, but I mean, my question is why? Why? Why do that? Put native grasses in place. There are little compact native grasses, all kinds of choices of little compact native grasses, all kinds of choices of medium native grasses and tall native grasses. And you know what? When you mix them up, it looks so cool in your yard to see all of those grasses interspersed with milkweed and blooming plants.
And then you get letters from the HOA saying, you need to cut your grass. Right, you have weeds growing, it's like.
So if you live within the Woodlands Township, you're encouraged to plant native plants.
Yeah.
The caveat being what they don't like to see is things that hang over the gutter. So keep your stuff in your yard, like the lower growing stuff near the streets and driveways. They don't like to see it over the gutter. And they don't like to see bare soil, so put down mulch. But we are a monarch champion city now. More native plants that bloom and help pollinators are a good thing. So you have options that don't get you in trouble. And by the way, back in 2013, laws passed in Texas that prohibit HOAs or any other agency from preventing you from planting water conserving plants. Your HOA cannot tell you you can't put those messy looking native plants in your yard. They can't tell you that because they're water conserving plants. They are prohibited from doing that. Okay, we're a little past our morning session time, so why don't we take about 10 minutes? And then we're going to actually talk about how we know how much dissolved oxygen is in the water. We're gonna do some water. Yeah. 10 minutes. I'll need a few volunteers to help me set
$10. I've seen one where they take a bucket, like that, and they just put like a saucer underneath it. They just turn that into a burger. Yeah, we probably, that's 3 days.
So what will happen is like people on the front row. So, they may. So that on this road. They all have to turn around. So 7 feet out. Spread them along. So start doing that. Yeah, those are good for there. Oh, yeah.
Terry, do you want me to do anything specific to help you or support you during this first actually doing water testing?
You don't have to do anything. You want to be my eyes wander while they're doing something, answer a question or help them understand the instructions. No, I.
Hopefully I put a few good ones in your boss even before you ask me.
Thank you.
He seems like a nice guy.
He is a nice guy.
That's great that you can come and see what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was. Okay, so put a couple more here. So we don't want to on there. I only want this on this row. And this row. And then some kids here in between, we spread them out so you've got one in every place that there's someone sitting on the row. I should tell them somewhere. Sure, that would be terrific. Let me, here's a couple of boxes to throw them in. I'm not putting them back in those little boxes again. Let's just put them in bigger boxes. These we didn't open yet. Cram them in. That would be great. Yeah. So let's ask, let's ask Carolyn to okay, I asked Carolyn first, so she told me to ask you. So, as soon as we get back and ready to start, like, remind me, Carolyn, about it, so everybody knows. Okay, so every place that there's someone sitting has a kid here and on the next row. So you bring me those 3 kids, and if we can't get everybody in on these 2 rows, then we'll set Yeah, every place needs paper towels. We need at least 3 paper towels in every place there's a kid. And every place needs safety glasses. Okay. A couple of places on each table where there are kids, and a couple of places need waste containers. So just like 2 here and 2 there. When people start coming back in, or if you want, you could go ahead and put down gloves put down 2 pair of gloves every place there's a kid. What's your boss's name? John Geiger. Okay. And then every place there's a kid, you have 2 pair of gloves. So there's no 2 pairs.
Okay. Yes, yes.
Well, that's great. I'm on video for being on board.
We're only.
I'm just standing there just like this.
Turn around here. No, there's 2 people here. Yeah, there's just 1 person.
Well, there's stuff there too, but everybody has to turn around and share. Well, technically, half of everybody has to turn around and share. All right, I need a couple of folks to take these 2 buckets and go find a faucet, probably outdoors, and give us just a little bit of water with a quick rinse out of the bucket and fill it about 3/4 full. That'll be a little heavy. We want to get a partner to help. Tells me I would end up more like you know, that's half the fun, right? No, safety glasses only their kids. There's 2 pair of safety glasses everywhere there are kids. Now this, no, this is my kid. Oh, those 2 truck tables, this long table and the next long table are where all the kids are gonna be.
Are these extras then?
Yeah. So we'll see if this works.
Right, but I actually put them with the.
So this can run. We wanna.
I'll just take my.
I'm sorry, I'm not doing a very good job of being clear. We need, 2 pairs of glasses with their 2 pairs of gloves.
There you go. Okay.
I think I got.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a Yeah.
Something for a partner for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I start.
Very cool.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that. Where are you gonna be?
I'm gonna get out some big foundation.
Nice. Where Matt Abbott.
Oh, Abernathy, such a nice.
Yeah.
Eventually, I'll have to call it a 4.5 chapter.
Let us know.
Okay.
You know, here's the thing. The ankle thing. So ankle thing, that's chapter. Their chapter meetings are there.
We were just talking about.
What does that tell you
It's
about
really limits.
the demographics of that?
It's, you know,
All the
our
cars.
chapters that we get called all the time. During the weekday.
Totally.
And so you go to the chapter and it's.
And by doing it that way, they're not ever gonna attract
Any working hours.
For like me, I work and I'm in school full time, so like Saturday mornings.
Unless I let me bring my kids. Well, that would be fun, a 5-year-old with ADHD.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
In the morning, right?
No, they don't take any.
Okay, cool, very cool.
Yeah, so, my oldest is, I mean, my youngest is not officially diagnosed, but I'm just like, yeah, you have it. And my oldest is officially diagnosed, but she's refusing that. Okay, folks, let's start this out. Here's what we're gonna do, listen up. If you're sitting on this row, turn your chair around and find a partner on the row behind you. If you're sitting on this row, turn your chair around and find a partner behind you. If you're sitting on this row, get partners together. If you don't, I guess you don't, put them right here. If you don't have a partner, find one. If you can't find one,
I need a partner.
let's figure it out. I'm right here.
Well, you see, you're. Yeah.
You have another couple of kids. There's springs.
I got a spare spot.
Can we move it out? No, because if it gets too close. Oh, but we're limited to your guys.
So.
We have an extensive. Yeah, you want to put that? Let's see.
Yeah, just pick everything up and let's see how close we can get the owl. We'll put something in the way. Whoops. Okay, y'all are gonna get to demonstrate to the people online.
You know, one of the first rules of
Thank y'all.
nature is everybody's gotta be someplace. So is everybody someplace that you have a kit and a partner, or you have a kit each? Everybody where there's a kit. So listen up, it's important. Do not put your gloves on yet, because you don't want water in them, and we've got to get water samples. When we start using chemicals, and I will tell you when, you will either have safety glasses on or you will not participate. If you wear glasses to see, you do not have to wear the safety glasses, but I suggest it. So, I'm sorry, where is he, my helper that brought the water? Oh, there he is. So we have a couple of buckets of water, and I'm sorry to say there isn't a stream right outside the door where we can go get water. So we're gonna be testing tap water, but I predict there will be some surprises for you to see in our tap water.
Can I test my drinking water?
No. You could do that at home if you have a kit. And we're gonna test this water, so we're all testing the same water. So guys, not now, don't make me come over there, not now, but for when we're done, what I've just added to the table over there is a cheat sheet for the test we're gonna do. We're not gonna go by that for this. I'm gonna tell you what to do. Don't make me come over there. And there's a sheet that shows how you would report data if we were doing this for real. They're both important, and I think it would be great for you to take a look at them later. So I've added those onto the table now. So next break, or as we clean up here in a little bit, you can pick those up. I didn't really know how many to expect here. So if you're here with someone or you frequently see someone, just take one, because I'm not sure I brought enough for everybody. I'm just not sure. So we are going to be doing just part of the testing that volunteer water monitors do in this region. As I mentioned earlier, Houston Galveston Area Council is the local Clean Rivers Act partner
for this region. And so they not only provide professional monitors for the waterways in this 13 counties around Houston, but they also are who the volunteer monitors report to. So in a normal time, in a normal year, out here in this general area where Heartwood is, we would probably be holding at least 2 trainings for volunteers who want to become certified as water monitors. Well, we're not in normal times, and we haven't done trainings in what, 3 years now, something like that. However, the folks down at HGAC who administer the program, the volunteer part of the program, are now beginning to migrate back into working at their office on a regular basis so they can receive and actually post data and keep up with who's out there monitoring and all that kind of stuff. And so in September, out here, in fact, at Bear Brand Rec Center, we're going to hold a training for people who want to become certified as Texas Stream Team volunteer monitors. The downside is the waiting list is so long, you're not going to get in. I'm sorry. You're not already on the list, you're not going to get in this time. But going forward, we're going to try to have a couple of trainings a year like we used to do so that very quickly we can catch up on those who have put in their request to attend a training and get certified, so that I'm hopeful possibly even in spring, we might be able to open classes to new volunteers. I mean, it takes a lot. It takes not just someone wanting to volunteer. It takes equipment and gear and supplies. It takes someone to facilitate your getting approved at a location, and that location is not only suitable for testing, but would have data that is valuable to the program. So, you know, there's some manpower involved there. It takes someone who has the job of receiving your data and collating with what everyone else is doing and get it posted onto the website so we can access it, that kind of stuff. So it's not just about training. So I suspect that come September, we'll take the top 10 off the list, and 10 people will get trained till we begin to build that background infrastructure to manage it all. Maybe we'll only be able to take 10 more in spring. Who knows? Time will tell. But don't give up if you're interested in doing this. I got certified as a volunteer stream team water monitor in 2004 and certified as a trainer for volunteers in 2006. So been in the stream team program a long time. I love it. I don't know, if you pay close attention, you might notice I'm a little passionate about water. So this is kind of my métier.
How do you get on the waiting list?
If you go to h-gac.com, go to there, a bunch of boxes show up on the front page, and go to environment, then go to water, then you can, it's a bunch of clicks, but you eventually get to Texas Stream Team, and there should be a link in there. I know it has been. I don't think they took it down because we weren't training. So it should still be there that you can click and say you're interested in becoming a monitor, and you put your name in the pot.
Teri.
Yeah.
So I found out about all this through my certification class, and I was on the website and I noticed, because I can literally walk from my place, I can walk to Caney Creek or Peach Creek, which are pretty large creeks in our area. And I noticed on the website, neither one of those creeks are listed as a testing thing. So what is how do you get those?
We have tested on both those creeks in the past. In fact, I have trained people who tested on each of those creeks in the past. But if you get into the program and you want to be a water quality monitor, we ask you 2 things, and that is to please test monthly. And if life happens, please try to at least send in 10 reports for the year, even if you can't send in 12. The second thing we ask is if you can possibly monitor for 2 years, because 2 years of monthly data gives us enough view of that watershed to use it as a baseline, so that in future, what we look for in data is things that spike up or spike down. I mean, I've had monitors say to me, Terry, every month I report the same numbers. That's a good thing. That's a great thing, because that waterway is pretty balanced. It's when you see spikes up and spike downs, that's when the problems happen. So a couple of years of monthly data reporting, and we have a pretty good baseline for what that water should look like. And I promised you we were going to say something to Carolyn, and you let me forget because I have an old brain. Carolyn, we haven't quite gotten to Texas Water Specialist certification yet. We're going to get there. I've got an hour, so I got to talk fast now. We need a no more questions rule. Anyway, how can we get this class certified for Texas Water Specialist? When they report this as a training class, will that box pop up? Can we check with Melissa to make sure the TWS box pops up to check as training?
Because I was talking to Ray about that just a minute ago, and because we have 52 hours built into our schedule, if you make all the classes, if you know you're going to get your 40 hours without this class, list this class as advanced training for Texas Water. If you don't think you'll be able to make the 40 hours, because in order to be a master naturalist certified, you have to have 40 hours. We booked 52. We take every class that we offer, we'll get 52. So what happens is when you realize you've got the 40 already, whatever's over that can be advanced training. So you don't have to worry about trying to find 8 hours of advanced training. That's kind of built in there too, right? If you know you get 40 hours, because we want you to be a master naturalist, you spend all this time in class with us, please. So if you do know that you're going to get your 40 hours of reading class, go ahead and count today as advanced training if you're going to be Texas Water certification.
Yeah. And this is 4 hours of TWS certification requirements. That is only a total of 8. And in a minute, when we get done doing this, I'm going to tell you how I can help you get the hours you need for that. So we're going to test this water to find out how much dissolved oxygen is in it. It's one of several tests. The reason I gave you this data reporting sheet is so you can see the suite of tests that we do as volunteer water quality monitors. Pick it up, take it home with you when we're done with this. We're not going to use it now. So if you get certified as a water quality monitor, this is the kit you would get assigned. It has things to do all of the tests needed. Secchi discs are to test turbidity. I don't know how many of you have seen or used a Secchi disc, but a lot of our waterways are not really well adapted to using a Secchi disc. Our waters tend to be shallow and pretty clear. If you can see the bottom, what's the point of using a Secchi disc? But believe me, there's turbidity in the water. Just because you can see the bottom and it looks fairly clear doesn't mean there's not suspended solids. So instead, we've gone to using a turbidity tube, which has, if you can see down in this, look in this tube, it has a tiny little baby Secchi disc down in the bottom. And so the way we check turbidity is to clamp off this drain, fill it with our sample water. Of course, this is tap water. Fill it with our sample water and keep checking until you can no longer differentiate between the black and white on that little baby Secchi disc down in there. and then start letting a little bit of the water out at a time. And as soon as you can see the difference between the black and white of this little Secchi disc, oh my gosh, it's so easy. All you have to do is look at the scale. This is just over a meter, but you see what the water level is, and you know it's 0.37 meters is the turbidity depth. This thing, this one, if you come up and look at it a minute, you'll see somebody took a red magic marker and put some little marks on the rope to help them figure out how deep they were dropping the disc into the water. And it's the same thing, you know, when you can't see the differentiation anymore, then you start slowly bringing it up until you can. And then you have to eyeball the rope and see if you can see that spot. Okay, it looks like it's about that far from the mark I made. So when I pull it up, I got to figure out which mark that. Oh gosh, this is what we want to do. There's a conductivity meter that tests the amount of dissolved solids in the water, tests how well electricity flows through because there are dissolved solids in the water. So one thing I didn't bring is the calibration standard. It's just the ionized water set to a certain standard. So there's other things including water temperature and air temperature. We test for pH using color comparators. So today we're only going to do DO. So let's get started because it's going to take a few. Why won't this lid stay on here? So first thing we have to do is get a sample. So in your kit is going to be a sample bottle that looks like this. What's in this bottle right now? And what's in the air? So do we want to measure the oxygen in this bottle or do we want to measure the oxygen in the water? That means there can't be any air in this bottle when we begin to do our test. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate. You know what? I'm going to put this somewhere. On the front. So these guys go there and these guys go here. So when I tell you what you're going to do to fill your bottle is you're going to bring it to the bucket, turn it straight upside down, go down into the bucket until it's well submerged, slowly turn it to the side, and it's going to go. When it's slugging, I'm going to give it a shake. Hold the bottle under the water. In my other hand is the lid, open side up, keeping the bottle in the water submerged, lid in the bucket submerged. I'm giving it a shake to make sure that the lid doesn't have any air bubbles trapped in it. Under the water, I am putting the lid on. You have paper towels on your table at your workstation for a reason. We are going to get wet. Let's not try to ruin the carpet. When I take this out, slowly turn it to the side and make sure no air bubbles are moving in there. If there are no air bubbles, we're good to go. If you've got air bubbles, you got to go back into the bucket and do it again. Come and fill your bottle. One person from each kit. And this is going to be a lot of steps. I want you to take turns with your partner doing steps. So somebody so you guys come here and you guys, one person from each kit, come and fill your bottle. Okay, I'm going to come next, right? Okay. Are you guys free? Yes. Let's just free over here. One of So when the time comes that you can get in the class, you're asked, everyone in the class gets to suggest a location to test. And so what they'll do is they'll look back and see if somewhere in that vicinity, someone has tested in the past, so there's already some baseline of data that exists. Or they'll see if, for example, is there a wastewater treatment plant that dumps effluent in that area? They love to test above and below where estimates when they dump into the water. So it needs to have some meaning to get data from that location, but especially if someone has already tested the source, they're gonna wanna reactivate that. You need to get a full Oh, sure, sure. We have one here. Yeah. One of them, it was like 2 years ago. Yeah, I looked at the data. Yeah. Like 2 years ago, somebody had done for a couple of years, we didn't want to do Okay. Paper towels. So that I can make sure that they're all that. Here. Okay, we all got water sample? All right, keep your spot of cap off, both of them underwater, do it again until you don't have air bubbles. All right, guys, now we're going to start adding chemicals. Safety glasses on, gloves on. I'm just keep saying this, don't make me come over there.
And these are in the same box. I don't know if she stuffs them in the box.
You never know. Some, you know, I have helpers at things and they don't always put stuff exactly back the way it was. So. Okay, guys, we ready? Give it a shake. Give this a shake. All right, we ready? So I'm going to show you what I want you to do, and I want you to wait for me to tell you to do it. What's one of the first rules of science and experiments and
Lick it.
we all have to do everything the same way if we want to be able to collate, contrast, compile data. So we're going to do it my way. I mean, you know, I'm just saying, we're going to do it my way. So you listen to me first, you see what I show you, and then I'll tell you to do it. So the first thing we're going to do is add a reagent called manganese sulfate. Look in your kit, find the pink stuff.
Where's your safety glasses?
And we're going to start adding this to our sample. And the way we're going to do this is,
I'm listening.
and I'll just wait till we're all listening. I'll take the cap off my sample bottle. I'll take the cap off my reagent, pretend I've done that. I'm going to turn my reagent straight upside down, hold it near the bottle. I'm not going to touch these, either one to the other or to the water. Why?
Contamination.
cross-contamination, so I'm holding it near. The other thing I'm gonna be doing is watching as the drops come out of the bottle. In a perfect world, I would use just the right amount of pressure on the reagent bottle so that all my drops are the same size. Well, we can strive for that. Let's do our best. And I'm gonna add 8 drops of manganese sulfate. So here's how that looks. The bottle's already full.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen when I add?
Spill on your fingers.
Do you have paper towels in front of you? So 8 drops. Set my bottle down, cap on my reagent right away, nice tight, back into the kit. Don't put the cap on your sample bottle yet. When you get done with that, that's how I want you to add 8 drops manganese sulfate. Do it now. Take turns doing these steps, guys. Done? All done?
All done.
Now we're going to add even more chemicals. Do you have paper towels in front of you, people?
You do the next one.
So the next one is going to be alkaline, potassium, iodide, azide. I want you to carefully add 8 drops. 8 drops. Do it now. Cap on the reagent as soon as you're done with it, back in the kit. Tell me what's happening in your sample bottle. So we had a color change, we've had a chemical reaction. What else is happening in your sample bottle?
Is it getting warm?
So you see stuff that's forming clumps in your water, yes?
Yes.
Guys? Yeah. When you put the cap on now, I promise it's gonna overflow. Do you have paper towels in front of you? Put the cap on. So what we've done is essentially the first thing that happens when water flows through our sewer lines to a treatment plant. They add chemicals that make the solids clump together so they're heavier than the water and can fall to the bottom. Does anyone know what these clump together sediments in our bottle are called? Sediment.
Salt solids.
No.
Look.
It's flocculate. Flocculate. It's a real word, trust me, flocculate. So the next step is for us to mix it well. But if I tell you to mix it well, are we all going to do the same thing? No. So we're going to do it my way. We're going to invert our sample bottle 25 times this way. 1, 2, 3. So invert your sample bottle 25 times.
3 sets of 25. Wait, was it?
Yeah.
All right, now, don't move it around anymore. You can either set it down or you can very carefully hold it. But what's gonna happen is that flocculate, those clumped together solids are gonna begin to fall to the bottom. And as they do, you look across the top of my bottle here, you can see where it's starting to clear at the top. These shoulders, these rounded shoulders of the bottle is what we're gonna look at. And as soon as the clearing is down at those rounded shoulders, we're gonna mix it again. Now it's hard if it's sitting on your table to look down on it and tell. So you either need to lean down or you need to lift your bottle up to see that it has cleared at those shoulders and above. And so what we're gonna do is invert our sample 10 more times. 1, 2, so 10 more times. All right, we're gonna let it settle again below the shoulders. So lean down, lift it up, don't shake it, watch for it to settle. And meantime, look in your kit and find the bottle with the red lid and the cute little skull and crossbones. What does that mean? So I am going to tell you exactly what I tell the 5th graders, guys.
Excuse me, what?
It is sulfuric acid. It's a fairly weak solution of sulfuric acid, but we are not going to horse around. We are not going to be distracted by something else that somebody's saying. We're going to open it, use it, cap it, put it away, handle it safely. I was teaching this class to a group of 5th graders one day, and the little girl she was having so much trouble getting the bottle open, and she said, could you help me? And I leaned over, and as I leaned over, it finally broke loose, and she was squeezing the bottle so hard she squirted my shirt with sulfuric acid. I thought, okay, put it in the washer. Guess what? It looked like Swiss cheese when it came out of the wash. So you really don't want it on your skin. You surely don't want it on your clothes. And the reason you have gloves and glasses on is to help protect you. If you get it on you, go dip your, oh, you already dumped it out. Go to the bathroom and wash your hands. You'll be fine, but let's be safe, all right? So we're gonna open our sample bottle. Make sure it's over the paper towel. We're gonna open the sulfuric acid. Guess how many drops we're gonna add? 8. Do that now. Cap the sulfuric acid, put it back in the kit. Somebody tell me what's happening in your sample bottle.
It's coming out. The book.
It's like a lava lamp.
Yeah, like a lava.
Did we have another color change? Yeah. So now it's this dark gold color. And if you're watching, all of a sudden the solids are starting to look different. What does sulfuric acid do? It dissolves stuff. So my bet is we might see the sulfuric acid get rid of those solids in our sample. So let's cap the sample. It's going to overflow. Carolyn, dear, would you set a timer for 3 minutes and tell us when you're ready? This time, we are not going to count how many times we invert the bottle. We're going to invert continuously for 3 minutes. So is everybody ready to start that when Carolyn tells us she's got a timer set? Ready? Go. So start inverting. So while we're doing this for 3 minutes, somebody tell me, how does oxygen get into the water?
In the water.
Well, the water.
From like,
water is made of oxygen too.
when it rain or the movement.
So when the water comes in contact with the atmosphere, is there an exchange? Yeah, there is. The nature of water molecules being what they are, there is an exchange. And Do, as the water vapor up in the clouds begins to cool and start to fall back as precipitation, does it glom on to more oxygen as it falls through the sky? As it hits the water, it's putting that extra oxygen into the water. That's why, you know, that cute koi pond they put in down the street from you, and out in the middle, they put that little fountain that throws water into the air. Well, it looks cute, but the reason they put it in there is it aerates the water to keep their fish alive. How else does oxygen get into the water? Photosynthesis of aquatic vegetation, including microscopic stuff like algae that we can't even see. Now, how does oxygen get out of the water?
Something eats it.
Could be too much
Evaporation.
algae.
Evaporation.
Some of it evaporates out. All those oxygen consuming organisms are taking it out, including the FBI. What else? So let me ask you this. Warm summer, ever go to the fridge? You've got a soda in there, you take it out, you pop the top, it's nice cold, you got a sip of it. Phone rings, you end up getting this conversation. You've walked off into the other room to look for some phone number. You completely forgot about your soda. 2 hours later, you come back, the soda's sitting there and say, oh my gosh, I forgot my soda. You pick it up and you take a sip. What happens? It's flat. As liquids warm, they lose their ability to trap gases. And what is oxygen? A gas. It's a gas. So if we go take a sample of water at a creek to test for dissolved oxygen at 8 a.m., and then go back at 4 p.m. to the same spot and take a sample to test for dissolved oxygen, are we going to get the same reading? No. The water has warmed. One reason why in those so important riparian areas, trees, waste, stream side are so important. Okay, you can quit inverting. That's why shaded areas in the stream are where you see those organisms, especially like fish, congregate. The cooler the water, the more oxygen there is. Or they go to the deepest part where the water is cooler below and is still holding on to oxygen rather than up at the surface. So temperature plays a big part in this. So here we have our sample. Mine looks pretty darn clear. Did we dissolve pretty much all those solids? And were you surprised to see that there were that many solids in our tap water? Yes. I told you there was going to be a surprise coming. So now our sample is fixed. That means if I took the cap off and left this sitting here, it could stay open for 3, 4, 5 hours. And there wouldn't be enough exchange with the atmosphere to affect the reading we're going to get. So it's fixed. Is this a mixture or a solution?
Solution.
Why?
Because there's been a chemical reaction between what we put in the water, not just a physical reaction.
So we can't take anything we put into this water back out, can we? If I had a bucket of dirt and I added water till I made a sloshy mud and then left it sitting out in the sun and all the water evaporated out, I'd still have mud. I'd still have dirt. That's a mixture. If you can take the parts back out, it's a mixture. This is a solution and our solution is fixed. So the next part is to do a titration. So to do a titration, we need a sample vial with a lid that looks like this. I'm going to tell you a couple of things. You can believe them or not, but I hope you have paper towels in front of you. I don't care how you do it. When you pour out of this bottle into this vial, it's going to spill. It just runs down the bottle. You're going to make a mess. Let's try to confine it to the paper towel, please. And look at your vial. Look at the scale on the vial. If you have more than one line, Find the line marked 20 milliliters. 20. If you only have one line, well, then that's 20 milliliters.
You want to do it?
Listen up. Can you say meniscus?
Meniscus.
What is that? So the surface tension of the water against the sides of this column make it look like the sides are higher than the center. We're going to add sample to the 20 milliliter line, and I want the bottom of the meniscus, the lowest point of the water, to be on the 20 milliliter line. I caution you to add it slowly and carefully, because if you overfill it, it's not easy to take a little bit out. So go slowly and stop when the bottom of the meniscus is on the 20 milliliter line. Do that now.
We're lighting on fire. Sorry. Get your eyes on it.
Carolyn, are you recording this for later or taking photos? Okay. Guys, when you get your solution to the 20 milliliter line, listen up. As you put the cap back on your vial, listen for the click, so you know for sure that lid is on there, because we don't want to spill that. And then cap your sample again. Make sure the cap is on your sample, so in case we tip over, we're not going to spill.
How close was it at?
Pretty close, Count.
It's pretty close.
Okay. Now we need a titrator that looks like this. And we need the bottle marked sodium thiosulfate. When you take the cap off your thiosulfate, you're going to notice it has a handy dandy little hole in the top here of the bottle. Watch me. If you grasp the titrator near the tip, it's a lot easier. We need to push it into there. I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to draw a little bit of the thiosulfate into here, then quickly expel it to get rid of the air. Then slowly start drawing down to fill my titrator. Now, take a look at your titrator, and you see that down here near the tip, it's this long rounded tip, and there's a flat surface right there. It's the disc that rides along the inside of this column that creates the vacuum so you can fill the titrator. I want to fill this titrator. I'm going to draw down until that flat surface lines up on the scale with the 0 down here at the bottom. So do what I just showed you and fill your titrators until that flat surface lines up with 0. You'll end up like this. So we should all end up like this. Do you have any question about where to line up the flat disc, the flat surface at 0? We all good? All right. When you turn the bottle over, grasp the titrator near the tip. Watch me. Take it out of the bottle. Put it into the cap of your vial. Do not touch the green plunger. We all good? Jeff? All right, now we're going to start adding the thiosulfate, and I want you to do it the way I show you. I want you to do it, please. So we're gonna put in one drop. I'm not gonna shake this bottle. I'm gonna swirl this bottle because nothing but the sulfate ever touches the titrator. So we're not shaking this solution out. We're swirling this solution. And as I add the thiosulfate, one drop, and I'm swirling, what I'm watching for is another color change. I want this dark gold color to turn to a light yellow color. Okay, is that subjective or what? Yeah. Do you see yellow the same way I see yellow? On your cheat sheet that you'll pick up later is this big white area on the back. No, they didn't forget to print something there. This is so when you're doing this test, you are going to stand with light to your back, hold your white surface out, hold your vial in front of it so that you get a white light bounce back and you can see what color that yellow is. And if you are doing this for real, you're out there and you're testing water, okay, you take your teenager or your, hubs or whoever goes with you. One person needs always to do the color testing themselves every single time because we don't all see colors the same. So to keep your answer consistent, you're going to use this. Use the white, go to pale yellow. Here, I want to show you the color I want you to end at. Drop, swirl, drop, swirl, drop, swirl. Check your yellow. That's the color I want you to end up in, right there. So do that now. Drop, swirl. You don't count drops. Drop, swirl. Come up with this color yellow. Stop when you get to this color yellow.
I think that's it.
Hold it up, let me see it. Hold up your sample, let me see it with white behind it. Show it to me with white behind it. That looks good, stop there. Let me see, white behind it. Add one more drop.
What do you think? How did we lose?
Yeah, don't keep adding anymore, stop there. Oh, that's good. That's good. Stop there. That's good. Stop there. Let me see it. Put white behind it. That's good. Stop there. Guys, stop there. Don't add any more. Stop there. No, stop there. Stop there. Okay. Yeah, stop there. Okay. Now we have to add more chemicals. Okay, this is called a direct reading titrator. What does that mean? We're going to read an answer directly off the titrator. So if we want anything in here to end up in here so we get a correct reading, how am I going to take this cap off to add more chemicals? I'm going to show you. Do it my way, please. So listen, I'm going to pop the lid open. I'm going to tip it to the side. I'm going to keep the tip of my titrator suspended over the column of the vial. So if anything comes out of here, it ends up in here. I should have opened my starch indicator before I started. So why don't you open your starch indicator? And I'm going to add this. Guess how many drops? 8 drops. And guess what I see?
Whoa.
So pay attention. When you close this, listen for the snap, that it's fully closed, and we're going to swirl, not going to shake, and we're going to keep swirling until all the liquid in the vial is the same color. You saw there were clouds of purple in there. Swirl it until all of the liquid is the same color. Add your starch indicator now. 8 drops.
Whatever you have is still there. It's gonna stay there.
Oh, we're not doing it, it's not, we're just putting the drops.
Right. Just take the lid off. Add the stock.
I thought we were gonna be standing around and napping for the last 30 minutes. We're not gonna finish.
Is it really hard to get out?
It can be. Here, use mine. Sometimes the bottle just gets like a vapor. Here, use mine. All right, now, guys.
Yeah.
We're going to continue our titration. Now we're going to drop, swirl, and every time you drop, you're going to see those clouds of purple. Swirl until all the liquid is the same color. So drop, swirl, until it goes clear. And put your white behind it. If there's still any blue in your liquid, add one more drop, but drop, swirl until it goes clear. If it's got any blue, add a drop. No, that's clear. That's good. That's good. Those specks are just the remnants, solids that are still in there. If the liquid is clear, you can stop. All right, guys, now our titrator is upside down from when we filled it. So now, let me put my glasses on so I can see what I'm saying. We see the zeros up at the top and we're going down, so the numbers get bigger going down. Find that flat surface that you lined up with the 0 before and see where it is. And in between the numbers are little hash marks. Each one is 0.2, but that doesn't mean your answer has to be a multiple of 2. If it's between 2 of those marks, see where it is. So you're going to read the number above and then point wherever you are in the hash marks. So figure out what your reading is.
So the green one is the bottom one?
So the main number is what's right above the flat surface. So if it's 2 hash marks below 5, it's 5.4.
You're supposed to be the disk, not the bottom. It's the disk.
The flat surface you lined up with 0. The same place you lined up with 0, see where it is. So now tell me what your answer is.
6.
6?
5.4.
5.4?
5.1.
5.1? 5?
3.
6.3? 6.6? 5.2? 5.6? 4.8? 5.2? 5.2? All right, what number did we want? What number did we want?
The correct number. All the same number.
Most aquatic organisms in freshwater ecosystems prefer to live in water with a rate of dissolved oxygen between 6 and 9. So by and large, we're a little on the low side, aren't we? And why didn't we all get the same number?
Yeah, that's what I'm. It's subjective to the color, no?
Because we didn't all do the same exact.
So could somebody have added too many or too few drops? Sure.
Different size drops.
The depth of collection.
Guys, what was in that bottle before we got our water? Air. So when we went to the bucket and it went glug, 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 where was that air going? So would the first person who took a sample get the same oxygen reading as the last person who took the sample?
So can you tell who the last person was based on the reading?
I didn't pay attention who was first and who was last, but here's the other thing. full transparency, the set of chemicals costs about $140. When we're doing demonstrations and it's not for real, we're using expired chemicals. So that could be a small part too. But here's what I have to tell you. Listen, our range is so tight. I have no doubt that we all did it correctly and we all got the correct answer, because otherwise we would have seen too much spread in our answers. So we all did a really good job of doing this. And this is probably a very accurate reading, because even though I'm using expired chemicals, I do keep them in a climate control. So they're not sitting out in the sun going bad. And so they have some shelf life left. So this was a good way for us to see what a water quality monitor really does. You know, they make probes now. I mean, literally, they have a little computer screen, they stick the probe in the water, and 7 seconds later, all of the parameters come up on the screen. Well, they only cost a few $1,000s. This kit costs a couple $100. Do the volunteers get the probes? No. So this is what we have. This is what we do. This and some other tests, yes?
Would one of the variables also be some waters in one bucket and then some waters in another bucket, and the bucket itself might have certain solids and things in the bucket that go into the water?
Highly unlikely, but when he turned on the faucet to get the first bucket of water, and that water been sitting in that line a while, and in fact, was it probably a lot warmer than the water from the second bucket? And what we say about water as it warms, liquids as they warm. So there are variables by the bucket, but not in this short a time frame, not from the bucket itself like that.
The 6.9 that you said is ideal, what did you?
629
But what was it, the measurement? What is it? 6 to 9?
parts per million.
Parts per million.
So out here in the atmosphere, what you and I breathe, the oxygen is 21%. That means 210,000 parts per million. We have lungs made to be able to breathe oxygen 210,000 parts per million. This is 6 parts per million. Does that mean those aquatic organisms are really well adapted to maximizing the use of the oxygen in the water?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So it's just as with us and the air, it's a key component of a healthy waterway, is that there's enough oxygen to support life. As the oxygen level falls down toward 5, there are organisms that can survive in that. They can survive, but they may not be able to reproduce. As it falls through 4 down into the 3s, there's a lot of organisms that can't even survive there anymore with that low oxygen. I mean, I've taken kids out to waterways, and especially if it was during the school day, and we may not have gotten there until it was midday. And instead of doing this, we have taken nets and scooped up aquatic organisms, macroinvertebrates, to try to judge based on who was living in that water at that moment, the quality of the water based on what macroinvertebrates we could find. Some things are more tolerant to pollutants, contaminants. Some things are more tolerant to low dissolved oxygen. There have been days the only thing we got out of the water were leeches because the water is in such bad shape. Other days we get dragonfly larvae and Dobson fly larvae and all kinds of interesting critters, glass shrimp, all kinds of stuff, little teeny baby crawfish. I mean, we get a big variety of things that aren't going to be there if the water quality is not good. Those are the days you love to be at that waterway. And here's a clue, it's usually in the morning when the oxygen level is higher in the water. So
Where do they go during the day?
To deeper water, cooler water. I mean, you know, and if they can't move,
Like downstream to deeper water?
or whatever,
Uh-huh.
they can swim upstream too if they're big enough, you know, to get through the waterway. But they're going to the deepest point or the shady point, wherever the water is a little bit cooler. You know, vegetation during the day, photosynthesizing helps keep the oxygen level up to a degree.
When you send people out to measure these streams, do you have like rules about what time of day and how much sun?
So the short answer is when you get certified to be a volunteer water quality monitor, a couple of things we ask you to do is try to always go to test at the same time of the month. Because I have seen times when we were in kind of droughty weather and over in Tomball where Spring Creek originates, it was dry. And yet down here at 45, there was water in it. What does that tell you? Downstream had water, upstream did not.
Lots of irrigation. There's a lot of sources of water.
That the natural
Water table
spring
falling.
is.
Where
out
Spring Creek originates is a much, much older community. Most of those homes are on septic systems, which means they're not putting water into a sanitary sewer that runs to a treatment plant that dumps their effluent into the water. So we have water when they don't. That means pretty much every drop of water in Spring Creek comes from a treatment plant. After they've taken the water in through the sewer system and treated it and put their effluent into the nearest waterway, it's wastewater. So, you know, water's interesting. I think water's fun. I don't know. Let's quickly cover this. So expel the rest of your thiosulfate into the vial. And I need volunteers. We can wait just a minute. Let's quick talk about something else. And let's empty the vial and this. There are some waste containers. There are those big containers with lids. We can do that in a minute. Let's quickly talk about Texas Water Specialist. It's a Texas Parks and Wildlife program. It takes 8 hours of training based on the curriculum. From this publication, Texas Waters, it's the curriculum guide for the Texas Water Specialist program. I have these in my office. If you've signed up with me as a person who wants to get certified, this is over on the side table. Use the QR code to sign up and say you want to be a water specialist. When you come to a water lab, I have these on hand for you to take one. If you don't want to wait for that to happen, you can go online, just Google Texas Waters Specialist. Go to the Parks and Wildlife page, scroll down on the left side is a bunch of list of stuff. Find Texas Waters curriculum, click on that and you can download it if you prefer that than getting a hard copy. But 8 hours of training based on the information in this book. It's basic water information. So I hold 3 and 4 hour water labs. It's a little different structure from what we've done today. I don't go into all the stuff I do with you guys, but we spend 3 or 4 hours in a water lab. Often we do different kinds of stuff. Water testing is something I periodically do, other things that we actually didn't get to today. But I also have monthly 2-hour online discussion groups on the publication. So once you signed up with me that you want to get certified as a Texas Water Specialist, then I ding you with reminders. So make sure I'm in your email contact list because you'll get a reminder saying there's a water lab coming up. You don't have to keep signing up, but I do ask you to reply and say you're coming because I carry a bunch of stuff with me to every one of these water labs. And if you don't tell me you're coming, I may not take enough stuff. So I need to know if you're coming. I send you a reminder and ding you and say, here's the Zoom link. It's helpful for me to know if you're attending the 2-hour online discussion. Not as critical because I'm not having to haul a bunch of stuff there for you. But it's nice to know how many people to expect. I make note, I either ask you to check in if it's in person, or I make note of who's on if it's online. But it's up to you to report your hours. And you report them into the chapter, just like you do your training hours, just like you're doing any volunteering you do. You report the hours you spend with me at the Water Labs and online to the chapter, and you tick that box that says it's AT, Texas Water Specialist, until you've reported 8 hours. As soon as you've reported 8 hours, and it counts for AT for the chapter, plus towards water specialist. So as soon as you've reported 8 hours, then stop reporting as AT, and you can find volunteering to do once you've reached your initial certification and you get your certificate and you get your cool pin that's here somewhere in one of these containers. So the certificate looks like this. Comes from Parks and Wildlife, and there's a cool little pin with a heron on it that says I am one. Melissa Felty, Alderson, sends you this directly from Parks and Wildlife, but here's a secret. Woodlands Township is the only pre-approved agency on the whole list in the Texas Parks and Wildlife list that is approved to give you all the hours you need to certify and all the hours you need to recertify. Everybody else, no matter which other agency on there, if you go to them for their trainings and their volunteering, you only get 4 hours max. You come to me, you get all the hours you need because Melissa knows I teach from their curriculum guide. Back in February, she's even set me up so that kids who are in grades 9 through 12, who are not yet 18, they can get in this program, and it's tough to get signed up as a volunteer if you're under 18 with Parks and Wildlife. So they sign up with me, they come to my things, they report their hours to me, and I make out their certificates and give them their pins locally. So if you have a teen who's in grades 9 to 12 and not yet 18, and they want to get a certificate as a Texas Water Specialist, oh my God, how good does that look on their resume when they're applying for college, that they not only got a state agency certification as a water specialist, but then that they show some volunteer hours to recertify year after year, especially if you want to study environmental sciences. So I can get you the hours if you want to participate. I put on stuff as often as possible. We did a lot more in the spring. We'll do a lot more in the fall. Right now, it's super hot to be out there, but some of the things that you can volunteer with me for are putting down markers on storm drains that say, don't put stuff here because it goes to the waterway. You can come and get pet waste bag dispensers from me and go to a dog park and spend a couple of hours at a time saying to someone who shows up with their dog, may I give you one of these for your dog's leash? And you explain to them really quickly that because it's a very cool carabiner, it reminds them to bag it and trash it, that if they put this on the handle of the dog's leash, there's their bags, and they can put like a plastic grocery bag right there on the carabiner with it. And as they use the bags, they drop them in that grocery bag. It's on the handle of the dog's leash. Let the dog carry his own poop home. And then when you get there, all you have to do is tie up that bag and throw it away. And when you give it to them, it's got a nice little message about why worry about dog poop on it. You can volunteer with me, and in neighborhoods where we put down storm drain markers, we go back through the neighborhood and we hang door hangers on every door that tells them, hey, look for those storm drain markers. And it tells them not just about pet waste, but about yard waste and lawn chemicals and the problems in our waterways from that. In case you didn't know, if you live in the Woodlands Township, TCEQ also lists some of our waterways as impaired because of bacteria. You should not touch the water. And pretty much all our waterways are listed as of concern for fish habitat because of low DO. We could fix this problem. we could fix this problem. It's 100% fixable. We can't greatly affect Spring Creek. We really can't, because there's too many other areas, too many other tributaries, too many other feeds and things into it. But we could fix the water in the township. All we have to do is a better job. Bag it and trash it. Take the second step. Reduce the amount of lawn chemicals. Don't blow leaves down the storm drain. I mean, we could fix the water. And you could volunteer helping people learn about ways to fix the water if you want. You can do it just because you want to do it. But if you get your specialist certification with Parks and Wildlife, then those volunteer hours count toward recertification. And they've just changed recertification to an annual process. It used to be mid-year to mid-year, which was tough to keep up with. Now it's on a calendar basis. So we didn't get to look at the cool, when you come to Water Labs, I usually have this book on hand, which is an amazing guide to freshwater ecology. I'll leave it here. You can look at it if you want. We didn't get to talk about, somebody asked me about not eating so much meat. We didn't get to talk about the cool thing I do about how much water does it take to do whatever ever. So a bunch of different things. How much water does it take? One of them is how much water does it take to end up with a pound of chicken meat in your grocery store? How much water does it take to end up with 1 pound of chicken meat in your store? About 500 or 600 gallons of water. I mean, first you got to grow the chicken, you got to grow the grain to feed it, you got to process it, you got to get it to the store, somebody's got to go buy it. It's about 500 or 600 gallons for a pound of chicken, but how much for a pound of beef?
Aren't almonds really bad?
Huh?
Almonds are really bad.
Almonds are a big water suck, but you know, almonds are so great for guys to eat. They really are. And they're good for the rest of us to eat. I mean, really, almonds are a healthy food. So I don't know, maybe it's worth some water. But
Why?
a pound of beef is more like 16 or 1700 gallons of water. So when I'm talking to fifth graders, I tell them, and it's true. You know, I decided a while back that at least once a week, I would not eat beef. I would eat chicken instead. Well, in point of fact, I probably only eat meat 2 or 3 nights a week. And when I eat meat, it almost always is chicken or beef. I mean, chicken or pork, not beef. But, you know, I try to ease them into it. I told myself that 1 night a week instead of beef, I would eat chicken so I can reduce my water footprint a little bit. And I said, and I tell them, I'm even thinking about maybe some nights that I won't have meat at all. Maybe I'll have other plant-based diet items that are good for protein and save a little bit of water on growing that meat. You know, there's no way for me to quantify at all whether any single one of those kids got a thought in their head that was helpful for them going forward, but at least they heard it. And the next person who talks to them about it, they'll hear it again. And maybe in time, they might think about it.
So I have a unique problem. My husband is actually completely allergic to all poultry.
Okay.
And so obviously he's grown up eating a ton of beef because it's Texas and that's what people do here. What is a second best option to chicken?
Is fish a good option?
Yeah.
Plant-based chicken.
Careful where you get the fish. And yes, there are a ton of plant-based foods that are high enough protein. And, you know, technology is advanced to the point where the other day I was somewhere and they had a not meat burger.
No, impossible.
Oh my God, it was terrific.
They're in HEB.
It was terrific. So yeah, there are products that aren't even meat-based that take life. Guys, I know you're supposed to go now. We also did not get to do an exercise that shows how water attracts water. So we'll save that for next time. It's a little bit more science about water molecule itself.
Do y'all have time to stay for a few more minutes and do this? Yeah?
Do you want to do this?
Yes.
There's M&Ms at the end.
This is the good one, guys.
Can I ask a really quick question?
Yeah.
As someone who possesses a Y chromosome,
Yeah.
why are almonds so amazing for dudes?
Well, I don't want to be rude.
Oh, okay, sorry, never mind, nope, scratch that one.
Google
Yeah,
it.
it's really good for guys.
Okay.
Almonds are great for guys.
Good to know, I will Google it, yep.
It's nature, dude, it's so awesome, and like having a kid get with them, like drive them, kids, drinking and stuff.
Yeah,
They're involved in it, and they have friends, and they friends are involved in it.
So I have several of these packets. If you want one of those flashcards, you can come to my office and I'll give you one. So tell me then briefly about the water molecule itself. What does H2O mean?
Molecules and one oxygen molecule.
And they're
Two
asymmetric.
hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom make up that water molecule. And it's a unique molecule in its structure, in its, the way that it's made, so that one side is positive and one side is negative, which means it's always reaching out to the next positive or negative. It wants to connect to the next water molecule. Okay. So water attracts water. That's why things falling through the atmosphere collect up water. That's why if you ever try to wipe up a water spill with a dry sponge, it just moves the water around until it begins to finally soak up some. And the sponge, the damp sponge, then will pick up the water. So water attracts water. And we're going to demonstrate that by using alcohol. This is isopropyl alcohol. Very little water. There's a little bit of water, but very little water in alcohol. I'm going to try to put equal amounts.
Does it matter if you use 70 or 90%?
Not really.
No, okay.
We're going to use mineral oil, which has no water in it. Let's see if I can try to get the same amount.
Justin.
Maybe they'll let us
You know,
front row next time.
You're cruising for a reason.
Hecklers
And the third one is gonna have water.
The ironic part is my wife is a teacher.
Does she slap you on?
No, she just gives me that look of just pure disappointment.
Okay, tell her I'm with her.
We'll do all that later.
What makes up the candy coating of M&Ms?
Sugar.
Nah,
Sugar,
food coloring.
food coloring,
Wax.
Yeah, I was thinking, is there some sort of wax?
what are we talking about today?
Water.
Water. Sugar, water, and food coloring.
This is really.
So let's see what happens. We're not, I was just shaking it down now. We're not shaking or stirring. So if water attracts water, should a little bit of the water in the sugar coating appear in the alcohol, because alcohol has very little water in it? Should any of the sugar coating appear in the mineral oil that has no water? Should, oh my word. Should any of it appear in the water? Why don't you come take a look? Look and see.
Yep.
What's happening?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So are you seeing any red in the mineral oil? No. If you look straight down on the alcohol M&M, it's got a slight halo around it because there is a little bit of water in alcohol. But look in the water. Water attracts water.
they used one with the artificial sweetener. Sometimes they use sugar alcohol, and it would have been pulled out in the alcohol too.
So, is this fun? And then we get to eat M&Ms. So I
We're gonna start with the baby.
You still have a bag of M&Ms before you go.
That's fun.
It is fun. Yeah, it's so easy,
Hello.
especially if you take M&Ms for after.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, the ones today are marshmallows with.
This is water.
Some milk, some milk.